Who's there to
We've
say
got
hello
Mike
to?
Kuipers.
Mike
Hi,
Kuipers
Mike.
is it? Just Mike.
Just
Hello,
Mike.
Mike.
This is your show, Mike.
Yes, it's the Mike Kuipers
doing
show.
a show especially for you.
I should send you a link and you can come on and join us. You can be one of the
Yeah,
hosts.
why not?
And then we don't have to look at the comments anymore.
There'll be some stragglers straggling in, I bet.
I wish we were able to do that, like make it a separate window.
Yeah.
Pop it out.
Yeah. Do it a pop-out window.
Oh, there's TVR.
Oh, gosh. We were hoping you weren't going to find your way here today, Tim.
Yeah, we tried to hide it, but
I had an email from
Didn't
Mark
work.
Van Ram today. He's
Just kidding.
coming up to do a bicycle tour around in the Ottawa area at some point. So anyway, I got to get back to him on that.
Well, if he's a commercial truck driver, I wouldn't head up that way.
Yeah, no. he's not. I think he's retired, right, Tim? Mark's retired, I think.
I think so, yeah.
But he's an avid bicyclist.
Oh, cool.
interestingly, Jeff, this one we've been talking, the A320 we've been talking about, it does actually say that the commander selected idle thrust reverse at 10 feet radio height.
Oh.
And then maximum thrust reverse approximately 3 seconds later. So he pulled those thrust reversers way too early. I mean, you're not allowed to do that. So
And that was the number, which one? Gosh darn it. The 1L?
no, both of them. That's what the data recorder said. So in
No,
the
no,
flare,
but which news item is it? The
You're
Yes,
talking
yes,
about
TAP? Yeah.
Okay.
yes, TAP 1L.
Where
Right.
does it say that?
Thanks, Tim.
All right. How do I indicate to you where it is?
I don't know. Like if you could look at your little scroll.
I
indicator.
see the highlighted yellow stuff. Beneath that, it goes the HCL analyzed, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, about 9 paragraphs down.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Recorded data. The commander selected idle thrust at approximately 10 feet.
So that's a bit naughty, and that might well have been contributed towards these weird configuration.
That's what I was going to say. Like, you're not supposed to activate reverse thrust until you're on the runway, right?
Oh, exactly right. Because then you're just relying on the weight on wheel switches to deploy them.
Right.
And, if they do magically deploy at the wrong rate, you're in a really nasty situation.
There's Dr. Kareem. Hi. And Tanya. Hi.
Oh, and by the way, Nick, and the Mad Dog, you wouldn't do that because there was no restriction for the weight on wheels had nothing to do with it.
Oh, right. Yeah.
You would go into reverse.
They're on the thrust line, yes.
Yeah. Like, okay, don't do that.
We used to do it in the Tornado. Oh, I've already mentioned that, haven't I? In my plane time.
Yeah, you did.
I don't know. We don't really pay attention.
No,
I do.
That's right.
Just kidding.
A lot of it I don't understand, but I pay attention.
Well, yeah. I'm impressed.
Okay, so we've checked our audio and...
How are we sounding out there in chat room land? How's everybody's sound levels sounding? Mike Kuipers, our unofficial sound engineer.
Hey, Tanya. Good to see you. Well, I don't actually see you, but you know what I mean. I see your name.
She knows. Tanya knows.
Tanya. She's a smart one, isn't she?
Has anybody seen the prelim for the Challenger crash in Florida?
No. Did it come out?
It just came out yesterday.
What? Yesterday?
Yeah.
I was looking for it this morning.
I've been looking every day.
Do you want me to go find it, Jeff?
Yeah.
Okay. You don't have a link, do you, Nick? See,
I can get one real quick and drop it in the
can
chat.
you send it over?
Sorry, what were we talking about?
The Naples Challenger 604 crash.
That landed on the interstate, that crashed onto the interstate.
Oh, right.
Killed the two pilots, but the two passengers and flight attendant escaped.
So what have you found, Nick?
The preliminary
The prelim
report.
came out.
Okay.
I believe.
And I think both Liz and I have been checking several times a day to hopefully to see something.
Well, now you're making me question if I dreamed of this. Let me
yeah. So what did they say then?
Tell
us what they said in the prelim.
Well, I just glanced over it, but in one of the forums that I follow a little bit, there's some question about, or there was some discussion about how the idle cutoff mechanism works on the throttles or power levers, whatever.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know. It sounded like there was a question of when they brought the power back, if they shut the engines off.
Ergonomically, how can that happen?
Well, and that's what they were saying, right? Like somebody said, did this happen? And one of the first comments was like, there's a billion Challengers and Canadairs flying, and how could it have never happened before?
Yeah. And then even if it did happen, I mean, just returning them to the correct position, wouldn't it just automatically restart the things?
Yeah. I don't know. And like I said, I just glanced through the
yeah.
Jeff, I'm sending you an article. I'm looking for the link to the actual report, but this article goes over a lot of what's in the report.
Okay.
Okay, so let me see this. If I copy this and I go over here, that downloads it to my computer. So I can't find a place to view. That's the PDF. But you should be able to click on that and then I think drop it in Evernote.
Okay, where's the PDF right now?
Private chat.
Oh, okay.
Oh, private chat. We never use that.
If you click on that link, that's a US NTSB link. So I don't know if
Okay,
it'll work
yep,
for a Canadian, but we can try it.
Okay, let me get
Okay,
this.
mine, when I click on that, it tells me, do you want to save as, and it like actually download. Is that what you were saying? It downloads.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine. And I'll bring it over into
Okay.
Evernote. I'll make it one. Do you want me to make it? What do you want me to make it the first item, or what do you want to do?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's start right off the bat with that one.
Okay, just stand by then. Give me a
Sure.
couple.
And I got it, and I have open in a window on my browser. So
Yeah, it looks like the only comment in here is the cockpit center console was found separated from the main wreckage. Both engine throttle levers were found near the idle stop position. That doesn't seem, I don't know. I don't fly jets, but that doesn't really sound like it's, I mean, if you're on an approach, the throttles will be back. And it doesn't say like they were in the cutoff. So that doesn't
it
seem
says they were
super,
forward of the idle stop.
informative to me.
Oh, so they really, they're just kind of stating some initial.
Yeah. This is the
Data.
prelim. This is not the.
I know, but sometimes you
Sometimes
can
they're
kind
more
of,
detailed. Yeah.
and sometimes you can kind of infer
Yeah.
some things from the prelim, even though they don't actually definitively state it. But just the fact that they're talking about the throttles, I'm wondering if that's.
There you go, Jeff.
clue.
The report is in Evernote now.
Well, and then the other question that I have, or that I immediately thought of, and like I said, I've been pretty busy, so I have not been like digging into this, but I did see they got a bunch of master warning lights on one engine. And you know, a thing that happens in GA twin engine airplanes is it has been known that like someone will shut down the wrong engine, right? So you get one engine that starts to fail and you mishandle it and you shut down the wrong engine. Now you
it's
basically
happened
have,
in commercial aviation as well.
yeah, but so I guess, do you guys, when you have, I guess we can talk about this on the show, but I just wondered if there's any time critical aspect of shutting an engine down in a jet. In a propeller airplane, you got to get it feathered, right? But
No, there's usually not, unless you have the reversers out.
Yeah, that's what I
there's really no reason to like immediately, like I got to do this like within a couple seconds.
Okay.
Right,
Gotcha.
Nick? Wouldn't you say?
Oh
the
yeah,
same?
we would always take the time to confirm, double check, and confirm.
Even the darn thing's on fire, you go, well, the thing's on fire anyway, all the time. You know, it's a controlled fire. But you know what I mean? It's just like that's the kind of mindset you have to have. Is like, okay, yeah, you got the engine's on fire, but you know, it's not like the airplane's on fire, the engine's on fire. So we don't have to rush into anything and like shut the wrong engine down, which has happened several times in history.
Hi, Donna Rose and Bill Aronic.
Fuel filter appeared clean, no evidence of debris, foreign material. Right engine. If you're wondering, we just got information that the prelim on the Challenger 604 crash in Naples has been published.
So
We're
glad
kinda
you're here,
quickly
Nixie.
going. Yeah, thanks for letting us know.
Mhm. We're glad you're here anyway, but
The fuel filter bowl displayed evidence of thermal discoloration. Fuel samples were collected from various points. Fuel from the fuel filter bowl and heat exchanger displayed a yellowish tint.
is that implying some kind of contamination or?
Maybe.
IHL boxes, hello.
Yeah, so that's only on the right. The left engine, I don't think they said anything looked.
Right. Correct. And the right engine is what they were getting the master cautions on. But they were, oh no, I take that back. So they got a left engine oil pressure and a right engine oil pressure. Oh, right. So forget
what
everything
page
I
is
said.
that?
Huh?
What page?
Page 1, right at the last paragraph of page 1 talks
Okay.
about the cautions they got.
Oh, the first of the three were recorded: left engine oil pressure, right engine oil pressure, and then engine.
I mean, to have two different turbine engines have a failure like that within 1 second of each other is crazy.
Mm-hmm. Was that? Now, it seems to me like if you shut down the engines or they shut down themselves somehow, that you would get
Yep.
left engine oil and right engine oil pressure
I
lights.
would think so, right? Because that pump is going to be dependent on engine speed. So as the engine spools down, the pressure would decrease.
I don't think we have any LEAP birthdays, IHL boxes. We were talking about that earlier. I don't think there's anybody here that's.
Okay, well, we can kind of talk about that.
Yeah.
As much as we can.
Talk your way through it.
Yeah, like we do most things.
So, is this preliminary report available to us all?
Yeah.
Yes.
Where is it now?
It's in
O1,
Evernote.
A1.
A1.
Evernote.
Okay. Oh, thank you. I got it.
Pay attention, Nick.
Well, I was busy reading something else that was very important.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. You're
I wasn't
excused.
just picking my nose, you know.
Well, I'm not saying that we made that assumption.
So, Jeff, have you got your little countdown thingy ready? And have you got your recorder on?
No and no.
Okay. Just
But
checking.
I should probably, but thank you for asking, because this saves me so much work and trouble.
I thought you
when
might be a little
I
distracted
actually
there.
get the
so.
thing recorded on. Okay, that looks like it's recording.
Good. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and let me just play some music just to make sure that that's recording.
Listening to the Headline Pilot.
It is. And what else? And what was the other thing you asked me about?
Your little
the
countdown thing. You do thingamadoodle.
You know, it's kind of demeaning when you call it a little countdown thing.
Sorry, I don't mean to be
Could you
demeaning.
call it like a very manly countdown timer?
A massive countdown.
Any countdown that only lasts 10 seconds, that's really not going to satisfy anyone, is it?
What? We're supposed to go longer than 10 seconds?
Yeah, afraid so.
It's been a while, right, Jeff?
It has been a while.
Okay, so I put the logo up.
Okay.
Okay,
Put the logo up.
just a minute. There
Okay.
we go. Make it full
And,
screen. Yeah.
Yes,
mhm.
ma'am.
There we go.
All right.
I'm
And then you ready?
I'm ready.
You ready to go? Everybody ready to go? Wait, hang on. Let me get on the right screen on the intro. And okay, well, let's do this thing.
You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show.
The view from our side of the cockpit door.
WAPG, it's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 608.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello, You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from our side of the cockpit door, with your host, Captain Jeff, broadcasting live from Studio 1A at APG headquarters in Roswell, Georgia. Today's show is recorded on the 29th of February, 2024.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the airline pilot guy. Picture light and he's flying by. With the airline pilot guy.
In today's episode, someone hacking ATC tried to send an El Al flight to a dangerous area. And JetBlue will have too many pilots in April and is offering them money to take the month off. Also ahead, more news and your feedback. So get all settled in. Tray tables and seat backs in the upright and lock positions. Electronic devices powered on. I'm Radio Roger, and Flight 608 is ready for pushback.
Thank you, Radio Roger. He is an award-winning TV and radio reporter currently at the #1 all-news station. Oh. Am I okay?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you were trying to give me some kind of an indication that
No.
I was muted.
No, not at all.
I saw your hand go up.
No, I was reaching for my light.
Oh, see, that's the reason why I try not to look at what you guys are doing. Throw me off.
Sorry.
No, it's not your fault. It's my fault. All right. So I guess we'll do what I did last week, which worked out pretty well.
Will have too many pilots in April and is offering them money to take the month off. Also ahead, more news and your feedback. So get all settled in. Tray tables and seat backs in the upright and lock positions. Electronic devices powered on. I'm Radio Roger, and Flight 608 is ready for pushback.
Thank you, Radio Roger. He's an award-winning TV and radio reporter currently at the #1 all-news station at the nation, or in the nation even. 1010 wins on 92.3 FM in
New York City.
Welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. It's an aviation podcast covering the latest in aviation news and answering your feedback. I'm Captain Jeff, a former jet training instructor and star lifter pilot in the Air Force and a retired 727-717 Mad Dog captain for Delta Airlines. And joining me just in the nick of time, speaking of Nick, from his studio,
in Hartford, Hereford, and Hampshire.
professional photographer, former RAF, RAAF fighter pilot, retired Airbus A330, A340 captain for Virgin Atlantic Airways. It's Captain Nick.
Hi there, Jeff. Great to be back on the show on this amazing day, isn't it? The extra day of February. February.
Yeah, thankfully, it's the last day of February, and we don't have to worry about trying to pronounce that word anymore. And also joining us from his home in the air capital, low and slow pilot, A&P mechanic, old airplane enthusiast, and engineer in the aerospace and defense industry. It's Nick Camacho.
Hey, Captain Jeff. Glad to be back. Glad to drop in, even if it's just for a little bit here.
Okay, well, we're glad to have you as long as we can. And that's what she said. And also joining us from her studio in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, retired financier and aviation enthusiast, spreadsheet master, and our producer, it's Liz Piper.
Happy Leap Day, everyone.
Yay, let's leap for joy.
Let's leap for joy. Well, it's jump for joy. Yeah, whatever.
Or that, too.
Yeah.
But it doesn't go with the leap thing.
I
if
know.
You say jump
Yeah.
for joy. Okay.
Anyway, have a good show, Nick and Jeff.
Well, thank you, Liz. Let's do some news.
Stand by for news.
All right. The first thing we're going to talk about here is something that we just learned about right before we started the show's recording. And the preliminary report, accident investigation of the Challenger 604 Bombardier CL600 2B16, November 823 Kilo Delta, that crashed in Naples, Florida, was released. And we think it was sometime maybe late yesterday. But thank you, Nick Camacho for making us aware of that. So we just quickly did a kind of a quick scan of the prelim to see if we could kind of get any kind of little nuggets or clues as to what happened in this accident. And sometimes in these prelims, they'll start talking about certain systems or certain things, and that kind of, not always, but sometimes will give you an idea of where they're headed in the investigation. I'll start off by again reminding you that on the 9th of February, about 15:17 Eastern Standard Time, the Bombardier Challenger was destroyed when it was involved in an accident near Naples. The two airline transport pilots were fatally injured. The cabin attendant and the two passengers sustained minor injuries, and one person on the ground suffered a minor injury, which is amazing when you see some of the carnage of some of the vehicles that they hit, that somebody, just one person, only received minor injuries. That's pretty amazing, I think. The airplane was returning to Naples, Florida from the Ohio State University Airport, OSU, in Columbus, Ohio, where it had flown earlier in the day. The airplane was serviced with 350 gallons of fuel before departure from OSU. Preliminary Automatic Dependent Surveillance Broadcast, ADSB, flight track and air traffic control data revealed that the flight crew contacted the ATC tower at APF while on a right downwind leg to the approach to the airport, maneuvering for a 5-mile final approach to runway 23. At 15:08, the tower controller cleared the flight to land. The airplane was about 6.5 miles north of APF, about 2,000 feet, and 166 knots ground speed as it turned for the base leg of the traffic pattern. A preliminary review of the data recovered from the airplane's flight data recorder revealed the first of 3 master warnings was recorded at 15:09:33, left engine oil pressure, or actually it says L, engine oil pressure. The second immediately following, like a second later, right, or R, engine oil pressure. And at 40 seconds, so just about 6 seconds after that second one, engine was the warning, that the master warning that they received. The system alerted pilots with illumination of a master warning light on the glare shield, a corresponding red message on the crew alerting system page, and a triple chime voice advisory, engine oil. 20 seconds later, on a shallow intercept angle for the final approach course, the crew announced lost both engines, emergency, making an emergency landing. And the tower controller acknowledged the call, cleared the airplane to land, and the reply was, "We are cleared to land, but we're not going to make the runway. We have lost both engines." And then they lost, there were no more transmissions from the flight crew. ADSB track data ended at 15:10:47, directly over Interstate 75 in Naples, Florida. Yeah, so we kind of covered a lot of this other information on previous episodes, and they have some photos of the damage, and they talk about the inspection of the post-crash inspection of the left engine and right engine. The only thing we were able to kind of pull from this data initially here, and again, just a quick scan of it, showed that it looks like there may have been some slight discoloration on the right engine. Fuel filter bowl, is that what that's called? Yeah, fuel filter bowl displayed evidence of thermal discoloration, and but it looks like there's nothing that's just glaringly wrong with either engine as far as I can see. Is that right, Camacho?
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. They discuss kind of visually what the blades look like, and no obvious, uncontained projectiles departing the cowlings. So yeah.
Anything about oil systems or anything in here? Because that's the enunciations they received were engine oil, right?
they at the end of each engine sentence they do say the oil filter appeared in good condition and no particles were observed within the pleats. I think that's all they discuss on the oil side of things.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, which is a positive,
right? But it doesn't say
in terms of the system.
But it doesn't say anything about whether the oil pumps were actually pumping.
Correct.
Well, that's interesting as well. Okay. Well, I mean, it's a little bit of information, not conclusive or in any way, but it's nice that they're giving us some information, and they're well into the investigation, and hopefully at some point we'll receive, what do they call that when they launch like a docket that they'll sometimes put out before they issue a final report that usually has more detailed information, and sometimes you can kind of glean a little bit from the informational investigation docket that they publish. But and you were saying that you were looking at some of the pilot forums, and there was some indication that somebody thought that maybe somehow the throttles were moved past the idle position and into the
there's just some discussion, and I don't know how the mechanism works on this airplane. So there were on one of the beach forums there was some discussion about possible causes to this. I think the one thing that stands out to a lot of people is that they got master warnings for oil pressure on each engine within 1 second of each other, which is a little unusual just in terms of how reliable jet engines are these days. To have failures that closely coupled without any pilot input, I think would be very unusual. And so that, and then there's a note about a little further down in the report, there's a note about the throttle levers being found near the idle stop position. They don't say anything about being pulled back into the stop or cut off position, but there was some discussion about how the putting the levers into the idle cutoff or whatever it's called in a Challenger, how that mechanism works, and if it's possible for that to happen in flight.
Yeah, I noticed, Nick, a little earlier, talking about the left engine, the main fuel control MFC throttle lever spindle, lever arm, and push-pull rods were connected to the throttle linkage bell crank and appeared undamaged. The red alignment marks on the throttle lever spindle and lever arm were consistent with an idle throttle position. So even with the throttle levers being near idle, in fact a little bit above idle, it appears that the mechanism they're connected to were also at the idle throttle position. So no indication there that they moved them anywhere else.
But it's entirely possible, I guess, that if they had, and it's even possible, I'm not sure how they work, as we mentioned, we're not, we have none of us have flown that airplane. I wonder if it's possible to have inadvertently moved them beyond that into the cutoff position. And then, of course, a natural reaction for all of us if we lost an engine is to pop them back up, right, into the idle range or whatever. So so they were just telling us about where their position was on impact, I guess.
Yeah.
So I don't know what conclusion you can draw.
Well, I've no idea whether those engines have an auto relight system or not. But in most cases, if you take away the fuel and then within a second or two put it straight back again, you might get a hiccup, but the engine will probably relight.
Right, because they're still spinning. You still have
exactly. It's still nice and hot. Everything is still ticking over, and all you've done is it momentarily interrupted the fuel. So hopefully it would catch again. But
if that's what actually happened, we don't know.
No suggestion that that's what they did.
Interesting.
If you were high on an approach, or if they changed your approach or whatever, right, and you determine that you need to come down faster and you pull the throttles to idle, how long would it take you to tell that the throttles were at idle versus if this happened, if that happened and the throttles were actually put in the cutoff position.
You probably wouldn't know till you try to push them up again.
Right.
So that's
Yeah,
what I'm
you-
saying.
and you get that warning.
The light, right? The light would
left
be the
and
first
right
thing.
engine oil. You know, why are
Yeah.
these? Why is the master warning on? Yeah, that's probably when you'd notice. Well, what's going on? And then, oh, the engines aren't running. Absolutely right, Captain Nick.
And then at that point, right? If they don't have the APU running, so it would be a non-trivial thing, right? Low to the ground to try to get an engine running, or would it not be a big deal?
It would be.
Not
it would
ideal.
be a non-trivial thing, yeah, because you know there are certain envelopes for engines to restart in flight, and you know, and speed. You know, your speed, your altitude, so many things that you have to parameters that you need to have to get a successful relight.
Yeah, with the speed that low, you're unlikely to get a windmill restart. You'd probably need the APU to crank the engine. If the RPM had dropped, the engine RPM had significantly dropped.
And I think Stephen Ivey was saying that it's typical for these operators. He said, I think didn't he say that in the airline version of it, they always below 10,000 feet had the APU started running. But that a lot of these commercial operators, business jet operators, don't do that because it costs extra money. And I think there was another reason too, and I can't remember what Stephen told us why some of the the biz jet operators don't start the APUs. But now it escapes me, as so many things do. But maybe,
including that little blonde round the corner.
Well. I still have all the doors locked, so
okay.
She hasn't escaped yet. I'll be right with you, darling. Anyway, there is no blonde in here, just to be clear, or brunette, or redhead, or bald-headed woman.
Liz has always got to
Thank you for that picture, Liz.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for that visual. Yeah, so there you go. The preliminary report has been released, and perhaps we'll be able to glean more information from it when we look at it more closely. But right now, I don't see anything that really jumps out. But thank you, Camacho, for bringing that to our attention. All right, I think we can move on to this next one. And is this one where I have a, yeah, I do have a video that I wanted to share. Where is it? Here it is. Okay. If you'll put that on the stage for me, please. And then I'm going to go like that and then like this. This is the Air Serbia.
Roger, Serbia 86 Charlie, hold short to promise. Air Serbia 86 Charlie, line up and wait by Delta 6, runway 30 left.
Serbia 86 Charlie. Serbia 86 Charlie, tower.
No
Are you familiar that you entered runway by Delta 5 intersection?
We can't hear what the response
Yes,
is.
Tora is 22, actually, sorry, Tora is 1273 meters. I assume that's not enough. Okay, calculate and call me. If you need, you can commence backtrack and line up a beam Delta 6. Okay, able to depart via Delta 5. Roger. Air Serbia 51 Papa, radar 133.1.
331, Serbia 51 Papa, thank you. Bye-bye.
Serbia 84 Papa, continue via Alpha 2 holding point Delta 6, runway 30 left.
Taxi Alpha, holding point Delta 6, Serbia 84 Papa.
Okay, they're showing some video, security video of the Air Serbia jet rotating, scraping the runway. And then here's some onboard video. The takeoff. Through sounds you don't want to hear.
Serbia 86 Charlie, is everything okay?
No, we have probably to go back, number one. So, the Charlie, 86 Charlie, we have probably to go back to land, number one.
Okay, do you want to join traffic circuit?
Yes, I have turned to the right.
Serbia 47 Kilo, vacate runway via Delta 4 immediately.
So we need to go back, we touched something on the ground.
Serbia 86 Charlie, Roger, join left-hand traffic circuit for runway 30 left.
Left-hand circuit.
All stations, Beograd Tower, all stations, Beograd Tower, stop transmitting and hold your position. Traffic on the runway, immediately vacate runway. Serbia 86 Charlie, Beograd Tower, please climb due to mountain on your left, 3000.
The mountain inside, we are climbing, probably we got a problem with the slat.
It says the aircraft received substantial damage, which we know when we talked about last episode. So see some fuel dripping from the left wing root into some kind of a container. They're showing some of the tracks of the aircraft beyond the runway. Yeah, they plowed the field in a couple of places with their main gear. And I think, is that it? Looks like everything has stopped. Okay. All right. So, you know, the thing that really got my attention most, other than the sound of the passenger video, you know, touching something on the runway, and that's probably a language thing, right? They're using English, and that's not their, you know, their native language. So, touching, we understand they hit something, but the fact that his voice is like wavering, that there must be so much vibration or movement up there in the cockpit area of that airplane, or the whole airplane itself, I guess, that it's gone. You know, like sometimes you hear the traffic helicopters doing their reports, and yeah, well, you see the traffic on the, you can hear the vibration. That's what this guy sounded like almost, you know, on the radio there. So that must have been a handful.
Yeah, either that or he suddenly realized the magnitude of his error.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Maybe he's just so shaken up that he made such an egregious error that the controller tried to stop him from making it, and he went ahead and made it anyway.
And he blew him off.
That's possible as well. But to me, almost it was like a physical, like kind of vibrato in his voice. But you know, I-Haul boxes and our live audience says, we have a problem with the slats, was a very conservative statement. Yeah, you know, we have problems with a lot of things there, sir.
That reminds me a bit like Houston, we have a problem.
Yep. On 22nd of February, just a week ago, Serbia's Traffic Accident Research Center reported that the occurrence was rated an accident and is being investigated. During pre-flight preparations, the crew planned for a departure from runway 30 left via intersection takeoff from taxiway Delta 6. The crew received taxi instructions from their stand to holding line Delta 6, which the crew read correctly back. The crew subsequently reported they were approaching Delta 6 and were cleared to line up on the runway via D6. But as we know, they were confused because they were actually a beam Delta 5, and that's how they entered the runway via Delta 5, which was what, 1,273 meters? No.
Yeah.
It was 1,273 meters from that point. The takeoff, he said, Tora takeoff runway available was 1,273, a little over 4,000 feet, 4,116 or something like that. But if he had gone and it was offered, well, here, let me keep reading here. I might get ahead of myself. Tower subsequently urgently called the crew, querying them whether they were aware of having lined up at Delta 5. The crew advised they needed a minute to compute their performance, computed the performance of the first officer's tablet computer. While the crew were doing the calculations, Tower offered the crew to backtrack to runway to D6. However, the crew confirmed they were able to take off. Tower again queried whether they were aware of Delta 5. The crew affirmed. Tower subsequently cleared the aircraft for takeoff. Tower observed the aircraft taking off, leaving a lot of dust behind and climbing very slowly out. The flight crew reported they had selected full takeoff thrust, normal acceleration until 80 knots. However, at 100 knots, they realized they were running out of runway surface. Considering the remaining runway ahead, the crew decided it was safer to continue as they estimated the aircraft would soon lift off. The crew firewalled the engines, so maximum thrust, and to lift the nose of the aircraft in order to use the maximum length of runway available. The aircraft began to shake as they left the runway surface. There's that shaky voice. Then hit an object. Following liftoff, the crew received indications of problems with a number of systems, including the slats, but amongst them flaps and bleed air. After working the checklists, the crew declared Mayday, reporting they had hit some object on departure, decided to have the landing gear checked during a low pass over the aerodrome. Remember, we had talked about, in fact, Liz, you said, why did it take, 55 minutes? What were they doing? Well, looks like this is, now we're seeing that there was a lot more involved than what we read initially. And so they must have done a fly past, fly by, whatever, for the tower to check the status of their landing gear, or gears, if you'd prefer. Let's see, ground staff did not observe any problem with the landing gear. Due to the problems with the flaps, the crews decided to use a higher speed than normal for landing, landed on runway 30 left without further incident. The crew taxied to the apron with emergency services in trail. After arriving at the stand, ground staff informed the crew there was a fuel leak from the left-hand wing. The crew quickly shut the engine and other systems down. Emergency services started to treat the fuel leak. After passengers and crew had disembarked, authorities ordered the aircraft to be removed from the terminal to a safer place. The fuel leakage continued to the next day, despite the fuel being pumped out of the tank. The aircraft sustained substantial damage. Substantial damage. I was trying to read ahead. Tire tracks were found past the end of the paved surface, which we saw in that video. With a number of approach lights, the aircraft impacted the ILS monitoring antenna 145 meters past the paved surface, leaving only the concrete surface with broken cables behind. Some parts of the antenna were found 175 meters past the paved surface and about 60 meters past the aerodrome fence. Other parts were embedded in the left-hand wing of the aircraft. A few meters after that foundation, a hole of 60 centimeters diameter was found in the ground with parts of the aircraft embedded. About 160 meters past the concrete contact marks of the tail section of the aircraft's fuselage. At about 160 meters past the concrete contact marks of the tail section of the aircraft's fuselage were found on the ground. No traces of the aircraft's nose wheels were found on the ground, while tracks of the main gear were found until the monitoring antenna. It thus can be concluded that the aircraft went past the runway end with both main gear struts carrying most of the weight and transmitting vibrations onto the airframe. The aircraft hit the monitoring antenna and its foundation with the left-hand wing. That's the thing that they touched there. The preliminary probable cause is stated to have been inadequate assessment of takeoff parameters during the pre-flight prep of the flight crew of the aircraft and after the decision to take off with a shorter runway length compared to the initially planned one. So as we said in the previous episode, that looks like, we were discussing this between shows, and it just seems to me, and Liz asked the question, was it bravado? This captain, going ahead and ignoring the fact that he mistakenly used the wrong intersection, and although being offered the ability to backtrack to Delta 6 intersection, which all the performance data was predicated upon, he decided, instead of tucking his tail between his legs and making the right decision, apparently having checked the performance data on the flight the first officer's tablet that they were good to go on the takeoff runway remaining. And that, of course, it turns out is not a good decision by the captain. Your thoughts?
Yeah, just going by the time, I wonder how well they recalculated the data. Did the FO do it on his own? If we had to recalculate performance, particularly when we just carved a significant length of the runway off and decided not to use it, we would independently do that, both of us, and then we compare the results, and we would, if we didn't have exactly the same numbers, as they shouldn't have done, because hopefully one of them would have got it right, that would have gone, oh, okay, probably best we, swallow our pride here and backtrack the takeoff. So that procedure, they obviously didn't follow the correct procedure, or they made an error. If they did do it, both of them made an error. Just shows how important doing those numbers. And it's a relatively simple thing once you've got an electronic flight bag. It's not rocket science. Interestingly, I didn't realize they would have more thrust available to them. So the flight crew said they selected full takeoff thrust, and then a little later on, when they got to about 100 knots, they firewalled the engines. Well, if you've got full takeoff thrust, where are you getting anything extra from? I'm just trying to work what that is.
So what I took from that is when we get our takeoff data, it's we usually have like normal, which is, I guess, equate to full thrust, or normal, not derated. So I guess the terminology full takeoff power was probably would equate with normal takeoff thrust selected, which is not the same thing as just jamming the throttles as far as they can go physically. You know what I mean? Like that would be beyond.
Well, yeah. So what one would be a reduced thrust takeoff. So what you're saying that, except that they say they selected full takeoff thrust. So that, for me, that wouldn't be a reduced thrust takeoff. That would be toga.
Well, yeah, because in your world, that's a different terminology. In the world that I come from, when he says full takeoff power, that means just the power setting, the highest power setting that they have in our data that is not reduced in any way, or assumed temperature takeoff or whatever, which is what we normally do. We try to use an assumed temperature takeoff, which is reduced power, to save wear and tear on the engines, et cetera, and sound, noise, all these considerations. But full power, we never used the term full power. We just said normal takeoff thrust. And then, and I like you, Nick, when I see full power, that means like I'm firewalling the throttles.
Yeah.
So I think there's
pushing it till it goes no further.
Right. I think there's just a terminology thing. Now, I don't know if it was the translation from is it Serbian? Is that their language, or do they have Serbian language translation? Maybe they, think that full takeoff thrust is normal takeoff thrust, with the way I would understand it.
It was just
yeah. Full steam ahead. Hall boxes. Thanks.
Yeah, we have something similar on the C-47, right? They have, for the old radial engines, they have METO power, which is maximum accept takeoff power, and it's become pretty common these days to use the METO power settings as a takeoff power setting for reduced performance takeoffs when you're not loaded up or whatever. And so we use, we do METO takeoffs 90% of the time, and every once in a while just push them all the way forward to make sure it has it if we need it at some point.
Right. And then in the, go ahead, Liz. Oh, okay. Yeah, good idea. A little bit of a producer communication there. Okay. What were we going to say? Oh, I was going to say with your fighter experience and my advanced jet trainer experience, Full power would be, or we called it military power. I don't know what you called the setting, where the throttles are basically up against the stop. But if you use a little bit more pressure, moving the throttles forward, they would move into the afterburner or reheat range, and then you definitely have full power at that point.
Absolutely. We use a similar term, or perhaps full dry power. So dry would be without. And of course, I think the term firewalling, it came from the days when you push the throttle up towards the instrument panel, behind which is the firewall between the cockpit and the engine, that to stop any fire in the engine getting back into the cockpit. And often there was a piece of wire that was stretched across the throttle, and you went up to that wire. That was the normal sort of maximum power. But if you really wanted to strain the engine to the last rivet, for a short while, you could break through that piece of wire and get the absolute maximum performance out of the engine. But, it would only last a few minutes often in that setting before it would disintegrate.
In World War II, they were using water injection. So like oftentimes when you broke that, they called it war emergency power, and you break that safety wire and it engages the water injection, but you just have, like you said, very limited time there because you don't have the quantity of water to support it.
Yeah. Interesting though.
I was flying with a first officer, brand new first officer, several years back, landing in Charlotte, and I was on the MD-90, and it was the first officer's leg, and he, unbeknownst to me at the time, went directly, normally you close the throttles to idle, and then you reach over the top, and there are some other levers there, or levers, reverse thrust, and then you pull those up and go into reverse thrust. And then on that engine, a FADEC controlled engine, there was a normal natural stop at which point you don't force the reverse thrust levers any further. But if you needed to, you could go into emergency reverse. And so you could break that. I don't know what how many pounds of pressure it required, but then you can go beyond into that range. And so the only time I have ever experienced going into emergency reverse thrust was in the simulator, when you're doing an abort situation and you need everything you can to get the airplane stopped. Apparently the first officer's technique was to close the throttles, and maybe he was actually holding on to the reverse levers as he closed the throttles to idle, and then he just went in one full motion, yanked the reverse thrust levers back completely past the normal stop and into reverse thrust. And the only thing that was different about that landing that I recall was the fact that it almost felt like he jammed the brakes on, like at a very high speed, because I could almost feel the airplane like somebody hitting like tapping the brakes pretty hard. And then I noticed as we were clearing the runway that I was getting all kinds of warnings, and I looked up over in the overhead panel, and I looked at these two lights that I'd never seen before. I can't remember exactly what it said, but it was like, oh, shoot, what just happened here? And then so
the spruce up your resume lights.
Yeah, well, so we contacted maintenance, and so they had us do a bunch of things in the flight management system computer, into the maintenance area, just to confirm that both engines had gone into emergency thrust, and which is not something they advise you do unless you think the airplane's about to crash. And he goes, yeah, well, that airplane is going to be on the ground for at least 24 hours. And I'm thinking,
bummer.
That's not good for the flight that's about to go back to Atlanta. We had already, Liz is saying, staying in Charlotte. Well, the airplane was, yes, but we were already planned to do a layover. So it wasn't a great layover for the first officer, though, because that was the last time I saw him. And
oh, no.
Now I don't think he was fired or anything, but I think that he was he had to deadhead back the next day and then get some
face
retraining.
the music.
Yeah, he had to go to the simulator and do some some more simulator sessions.
Tea and biscuits with the chief pilot without the tea and biscuits.
I felt so bad for him. He felt so horrible, I'm thinking, I didn't even realize it until, we cleared the runway and all these warnings were on. I'm thinking, oh, that's no good. And then, of course, the crew that was going to take the airplane out next and the entire gate area full of passengers, because it was a very full flight. It was completely full all the way back to Atlanta. Well, the flight was canceled, obviously. So he felt horrible, and I felt bad. But anyway, that's all to say. You're just thinking about, going beyond the stop or firewalling. I guess it was like reverse firewalling.
I was just going to, before we move on, Sir Wellington Beefley ask a question here.
I don't think that's his real name. I don't know. I'm just saying. Must be somebody in New Zealand.
Say again?
It must be somebody that lives in New Zealand, maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know.
After reviewing the damage, could the wing spar have been compromised or close to compromised? There's definitely a big gash at the root area of the wing spar, so I think that's a possibility. But, newer airplanes have these big, giant fairings, like wing root fairings now, that look really bulbous. That you can see that kind of like teardrop shape. And those are generally not very structural. It's just a big aero fairing. So that huge hole that's really noticeable probably doesn't end up being a big deal. The gash in the wing could be a big deal depending on where the spar is. Usually you have two or more spars, so you have one more forward and one more aft. Same thing with the tail. I think I'd be a little more worried about the tail getting into the forward spar. But I think in terms of damage, the thing that probably concerns me the most is if you go back to that picture of looking at the fuselage, the gash up along the top of that fairing looks like it could be in the pressure vessel of the fuselage. And so if they did, if that gash breached the pressure vessel for a significant length, that would be a pretty challenging repair.
Yeah, you'd need the really thick speed tape to cover that.
Yeah, exactly.
In fact, Captain Nick made that same point you were making about that fairing on the last episode. You weren't here, but we were just like you, Camacho. We were most concerned about that gash in the actual skin of the fuselage, which I said, I don't think they're going to be able to pressurize with that.
Right.
Not that they would anyway, because they were going to be coming back immediately as they did. They didn't get to any, I think they only got up to 4,000 feet or something.
Fortunately, with it happening on the ground, right, it's not going to cause a critical failure. It wouldn't be like they could get almost up to pressurization and it would burst. They would just turn the pressurization on and it would never build.
It would never pressurize.
Yeah. There'd just be a loud whistle.
Right. Right.
All right. Well, I know that Camacho can't stay with us the entire show. We want to make sure that we cover one of the news items here where we might be able to get some insight from Camacho, because I think this has happened to him.
I was going to say, I noticed you felt very strongly that I would have input on this topic.
I'm not saying that you have experienced this. Okay. I just want to be very, very clear. It's 1J. And let's see if you'll add my thing to the thing. All right. And here we go. I'm going to hit play. This is from Flight Records video. On February 14th, 2024, an Eclipse 500 aircraft took off from Caldwell, Idaho with a tow bar and landed on runway 10 right at Boise Airport, Idaho. After landing, the pilot reported hearing a loud noise from the front. They stated there was a tow bar attached to the front landing gear and the sparks and such. I can't read that fast.
1400 Charlie's information Delta just passing Nampa at 5,600 feet inbound for landing, parking Jackson Jet.
Eclipse 429 Charlie, Big Sky approach, squawk 0311, verify you have Delta.
0311 and we have Delta 1400 Charlie.
429 Charlie, radar contact, 10 miles west of the Boise Airport, make straight in, runway 10 left.
Straight in 10 left, 1400 Charlie.
That's number 1400 Charlie, Boise Tower. Contact Boise Tower.
Boise Tower, 900 Charlie. Morning Boise Tower, Eclipse Jet 1400 Charlie, descending through 4,300.
they changed to 10 right. Probably easier to get to the jet center. And it shows the depiction here of them landing on 10 right.
49er Charlie. Charlie, turn left to Echo, cross runway 10 left, and then taxi to parking the Alpha going to Jackson.
No, I'm wrong about that.
Okay, left to Echo. I've got a lot of noise on the front wheel here.
49er Charlie, Roger. And did you need to just stop and hold there?
See if I can clear the runway here.
49er Charlie, do you just want to go to the south then?
I'd like to get off at Echo just because I'm not sure what all this noise is.
49er Charlie, Roger. 49er Charlie, you just want to make a right turn off the runway then?
Sure, I'll make a right turn on Echo.
49er Charlie, yeah, right. Turn right at Echo, and the vehicles give way to you there. You can use Bravo 2 there if you'd like as well.
Something's definitely wrong, Tower. I'm going to need some kind of assistance for a tow. I was going to Jackson Jet.
Tow bars are on there.
That's right.
Charlie,
oh, sorry, we don't have a tow bar. Oh, it's not a problem.
I'll work on getting a tow there. So just clear the runway, and then I'll work on that.
Tell them they don't need to bring a tow bar.
Charlie. You just stop right there is fine.
Very clever.
49er Charlie, kind of ground 121.7.
Only ground 7.7. 1.7.
49er Charlie, the Zebra said that there were sparks coming from your front tire there, so just shut down there, and we're actually going to roll the equipment.
Okay, we'll shut down here, 9er Charlie, thanks.
Any obstacles on frequency?
What's the front side time?
19er, go ahead.
19er, Boise ground, there's a Eclipse jet that turned off Bravo 2 on the Bravo by the A-10s right there. He says he has some sort of noise emanating from his plane.
What?
We were wondering if you'd just go check him out and see what's going on, if you see anything on.
An emanating?
From Western request outside taxiway.
From there, it looks like he wants to shut down and get a tug from Bravo.
Copy that. From Western ramp request outside taxiway.
Flying there, sparks coming from the front tire.
Sparks coming from the front tire, Zebra 44?
Affirmative. Sparks and smoke.
Boise ground, 27 requesting clearance to the incident.
He said Boise ground, roger, stay your position. 7, stay your position.
From city fire.
Smoky 7, roger, cross, runway 10 left and runway 10 right at Delta, then proceed Bravo to the Eclipse at Bravo 2.
Smoky 7 copies, proceeding Delta, crossing both runways to Bravo to the incident.
Smoky 4, sorry about that, I stepped on you again.
Smoky 4 and 91, request pushing out the aircraft.
Smoky 4, there is smoke and sparks from the front tire. It looks like there's fire trucks responding from the guard ramp and from the city fire ramp.
Boise ground, Smoky 7 plus 2 off all runways and on Bravo, proceeding to Bravo 2.
7, roger, just verify all your smoke reveals are done, vehicles are done, crossing 10 left.
That's affirmative. All vehicles are off Delta at Bravo.
7, thank you. We're going to use that runway now.
Tower Ops 19er, Bravo Golf, request 10 right.
19er, Boise ground, proceed on runway 10 right.
Proceed 10 right, Ops 19er. Confirm the airplane with the mechanical came off 10 right.
Yes, he landed 10 right, and then just exit there, Bravo 2. So if you could just inspect that whole runway, I'm not going to use that runway.
Copy that. We'll show 10 right closed, and I'll inspect it.
19er. I don't know where he came to a stop, and then he said he had some scraping noise, and then he cleared the runways and tried just right in that area all the way up to Bravo 2.
Copy. They're saying he's got a tow bar attached. Okay.
What?
Yeah, plane must have departed with that.
Bring your own tow bar.
I got metal debris on 10 right, so it's going to be closed for a while longer. AFM's on the way.
29, yeah, we just closed late, and I figured maybe there was some damage to the runway, I'm not sure.
aircraft landed with tow bars still attached on the front gear, Boise, Idaho. They're showing the FAA report. I don't, and it's not just this flight records video. I mean, all the different sources of these videos that we read when they're listening to live ATC. It's funny sometimes to look at, we're reading the captions on the video as we're recording here. It's amazing how many times they get, I mean, I'm hearing
words
something
incorrect,
way different than what they're putting on the captions. I'm thinking,
yeah,
it might have something to do with their native language or something. But every time I see at least one or two kind of major mistakes with the words they've used. But they get the gist of the situation. So speaking of gist, I'm thinking show title, Bring Your Own Tow Bar, BYOT. I don't know. So that's, and the other thing I was thinking is this guy's flight was like even shorter than the flights I used to do when I was an active airline pilot there in the last few years. Just a quick hop, skip, and a jump from an airport to the northwest of Boise International. But so Nick Camacho, and the reason why I wanted you to be here to cover this has nothing to do with the fact that I even remotely suspect that this has ever happened to you. But you are a person who flies smaller airplanes, and the Eclipse jet, you can explain to us, is a small airplane, a small jet.
Yep.
And in fact, I believe your family makes tow bars for certain types of airplanes, not this kind of airplane, but
right.
So yeah. I'm thinking this guy would be an expert on. Inform us, how could you possibly have a tow bar on your front nose wheel and not know it until you've landed somewhere? If you can help us.
The answer is I have no idea. So there are various instances of tow bar malfeasance, right? There's lots of stories of guys taking off with tow bars on Cessna 150s or Piper Cherokees. There's a bunch of different factors in play, right? So for small GA airplanes, it is very common for the pilot to be moving the airplane around by himself. And so the pilot is in control of the airplane, the pilot is in charge of the tow bar, and the pilot is in charge of everything.
How does the tow bar work? What's a tow bar?
Yeah, so the tow bar is just a piece of equipment, right? It's generally at its simplest for something like a Cessna 150 or a 172 or a Bonanza even. It's just generally it's a Y-shaped, or it can be an L-shaped metal bar, right, that interfaces with the strut in some way. Usually for like a 150, for anything, it's oftentimes kind of like Y-shaped, and it interfaces with pins on each side of the nose strut so that you can steer it. You can like push and pull, and you can steer it, right? The Bonanza landing gear has toe pins on it. So the tow bar goes over the toe pins, and that serves a couple of different purposes. Because the Bonanza landing gear has limited travel, it's easy to oversteer the nose gear, and those pins will shear off. Those pins will break before you break something in the steering mechanism of the airplane. Other airplanes like RVs just have free cast ring nose wheels, so you can use like an L-shaped bar that goes in the axle of the wheel and steer those airplanes around. But at the end of the day, it's just a piece of metal that you use to push and pull the airplane around, a little easier than by a strut or by the propeller or something. As the airplanes get larger and it gets harder to move them, right, the tow bar becomes a little more complex and a lot heavier. The Eclipse is what was known as a VLJ, which was like a in vogue kind of classification of airplanes, probably in like the mid 2000s, I would guess.
And that
was supposed to be the next big thing. Very light jet.
Okay.
So it was like it was going to be, small, I think like 4 or 6 place jets. They were going to be mostly owner operated, single pilot, all of that stuff. Like simplification of the business jet was, I think, kind of the approach there. But even with it being a very light jet, it's still, I just went and popped it in here. It still has a gross weight of 6,000 pounds and empty weight of about 3,500 pounds. So it's still a heavy airplane compared to, say, like a 150 that might weigh 1,400 pounds, or my Bonanza that weighs 1,900 pounds. So it's still a very heavy airplane. And generally, you'll see them moved around with much larger tow bars attached to towing apparatus, whether that's like a tractor or a golf cart or a like stand-on towing, like dedicated towing thing. And so I guess I say all of that to get to my point, which is I don't understand how they wouldn't have felt anything when they rotated the airplane, because there would have been I assume it had a fairly large tow bar. I haven't seen any actual pictures. There's there's at the beginning of the video we watched, there's like a image of a heavy tow bar superimposed to the nose of the airplane.
That does not look like
I don't think that's accurate.
Appropriate for that size airplane.
Right. But two things would happen, right? Like as you rotate, if you've got, say, like a 80-pound tow bar, maybe this airplane's big enough that you wouldn't feel it as you rotate. But I would have thought that, steering, like the nose, as the nose wheel tracks down the runway, something funny would have happened as you started getting up to speed. But the thing that I really don't understand is how it didn't make enough noise when they put the landing gear up to know that they had an issue.
And how did they not have a landing gear malfunction?
Right.
With the tow bar still attached to the nose strut or nose wheel. That's true. I was going to, Liz is saying that one of our audience members, iHaul Boxes, is answering Bill, because Bill had the same question. Like, how is it that they didn't hear the scraping noises taking off, and how they didn't have a malfunction when they retracted the gear? But maybe I guess it's possible that because it was such a short hop from airport to airport that they didn't even try to retract the gear. They just kept it down. I guess that's possible.
I guess that's possible. I would think. Well, I guess I don't know. I don't have any jet experience.
Yeah.
In the airplane that I fly with retractable landing gear, the gear speed is slow enough that I don't know if there's a distance short enough that I would not put the gear up unless I know I have a gear issue, right? Even if I'm only going 10 miles or something, I think just because of the flow in which the checklists and the airplanes work, I would think that would add some human factors questions into it, making a significant change in your workflow like that. But yeah, regardless, I would think even if you let the gear down, I would think it would make a bunch of noise.
Yeah.
Hanging down there. So I don't know.
Well, Tim Van Ram, I think, has the answer. Obviously, it was a retractable tow bar. iHaul Boxes said, there's something going on with my computer here. I'm not seeing what you're seeing. Okay, here we go. iHaul Boxes, or should we start shackling the operators to the tow bar? I don't know. Would you notice? Sure.
That's the other comment I was going to make. A couple of comments, right? So it's a little. I think it's probably a little harder to place blame here, because oftentimes, when you talk about business jets being serviced by FBOs and stuff, it's not necessarily the responsibility of the pilot to. I mean, at the end of the day, it's always the responsibility of the pilot, right? But oftentimes, you'll have the FBO people putting the tow bar on and taking the tow bar off the airplane, chocking and unchocking the airplane. So that would be a curious thing to know, where he came from. he was familiar with their operation and if they had reasonable and clear communication in regards to moving the airplane before they took off and all that sort of stuff. With little airplanes, and this sounds a little hypocritical because you mentioned that me and my dad make tow bars, and we make tow bars for vintage airplanes like tailwheel airplanes like Stearmans and T6s, and they're pretty heavy. They're about 80 pounds, and they got wheels and all sorts of stuff on them, and so it's not uncommon to hook them up and leave them on the airplane. And like the guys at our airport tow their airplanes around with golf carts and stuff. But with smaller airplanes and handheld tow bars, I have a personal rule. Like I've talked about my personal rules before, in regards to like maintenance. And I have another one, in regards to tow bars, which is I never have a tow bar attached to my airplane that I am not touching. So I never leave a tow bar on the airplane. And this is why, because I am deathly afraid of, yeah, right. It makes with the internet, it makes a big story regardless of how much damage it does. Right. But it's a big deal. Like if you start up an airplane with a tow bar on it, even if you're taxiing around, on a taxiway or something that is uneven enough to get the tow bar to start bouncing, there are instances where the tow bar bounces up into the propeller, and that's an engine rebuild. That's a new propeller and an engine rebuild. We've
what do you know
gone
about
into depth
rebuilds?
about the pain that is. If that doesn't happen and you get into the air and you try to retract the landing gear, in my airplane, I don't even know what the best case scenario is. I think best case scenario is it goes all the way up into the well and you only wreck your gear doors and door actuator rods, which is probably $5,000. So it is a significant event no matter what the outcome is if you leave the tow bar on the airplane trying to put the gear up. So I will never leave a small handheld tow bar attached to the airplane. I've had a couple of people make comments about, like kind of rib me about that because I'll move the airplane somewhere and then I have to stop to, reposition. Like if I'm getting ready to push it into the hangar and I've got to go run and reposition something real quickly, or like if I'm pulling it out on the ramp and there's like a cone or something that's in the way and I'm going to be away from the tow bar for 2 minutes, I'll still disconnect the tow bar from the landing gear and, put it on the ground next to the airplane or lean it against the golf cart or whatever I'm towing with. And like I said, I've gotten people that have ribbed me for that, but I also know people that have left the tow bar on the airplane and gone flying with it. And I would much rather be the guy that's getting ribbed on the ground versus the guy that's in the air thinking, well, now I've done it.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Wow.
I'm personal experience of that because when I was a teenager and I was working for a flying school on a little, GA aerodrome, my boss, who owned a Cessna 410 Golden Eagle, I watched him taxi out with his tow bar, which was one of those that you sort of pulled, you manually pulled an aircraft along with it. But it was bouncing along in front of his nose wheel as he taxied out at a tremendous rate of knots. He was I didn't really like him. He was a bit of a nasty chap, but he was...
You're going, yes!
Yeah, well, no, I didn't, because I did the good thing, because I was a stupid teenager. No, he was a little New Zealand ex-racing car driver. Anyway, he owned this lot. And so I ran in front of his aircraft, put my arms up in a cross, and luckily he saw me and stopped. And then I ran between the propellers to get this nose thing off, and I came back out and held it up and showed it to him, and he just turned red at the gills and taxied past me as if I didn't exist and never ever mentioned it to me. So that was it. Yeah, that's what I thought about him. Oh, there you go. My first job in aviation.
Yeah, my first job in aviation was being a line boy or a lineman or whatever they call those people now at a fixed base operator.
I think line person is the
line person.
appropriate.
Yes.
appropriate
now
in this day and age.
Okay. Yeah. Somebody who works on the line, some human. All right. Anything? Yeah. So I guess we're just not sure exactly how this happened.
One other thing I will mention for anybody who is not as familiar with sitting in an airplane and wondering how this could possibly happen. The reason that we're talking about all the due diligence you have to do on the ground is because when you're sitting in the pilot seat with a nose out in front of the airplane, whether it's a jet nose or whether it's an engine in front of you, you will not be able to see the tow bar. It's just, it is, I can't think of an airplane, maybe like an air cam, but for 99% of the airplanes out there, if you leave the tow bar attached unknowingly and get in the airplane, it'll be nearly impossible to see it from the cockpit. Probably not. Liz asked if the engine was running, if you'd hear it scraping along the runway. Probably not, just because, I mean, it depends on the tow bar, right? The light little handheld tow bars like a 152 or 172 would use are probably so light they just go bouncing down the taxiway and not make a ton of noise. And then a lot of the really heavy like jet style tow bars have wheels or casters on them, so they'll just roll down the taxiway with you. Yeah.
I was thinking, if it was like one of those lightweight ones, maybe it was just like it's suspended above the surface of the runway, and it wasn't until he landed and the nose wheel touched down, and that was enough force or momentum for the bar to kind of tilt down and actually scrape the runway surface in Boise.
That could be, depending on the geometry, that the bar may sit down on the tire. Mm-hmm. That's how I think that's how one of my tow bars works. Is the pins are back far enough, right? When you let go of the bar, it'll sit down on the tire, but the front handle won't go all the way to the ground. So maybe if it's light enough and it's just sitting on the tire will just spin on the bar.
And in some airplanes, you mentioned, most airplanes with a regular tow bar, even a smaller airliner like I was flying in my last couple of years, the nose protrudes so far out that you cannot see the tow bar, and sometimes it's hard to see the tug, depending on the kind of tug tractor that they're using. And then if you're flying an airplane like Nick's 340 or the Lockheed TriStar L1011, the nose wheel, it sits so far back that you can't even see the tug when the tug and the tow bar are connected at all. Yes. And there was one time in I think it was West Palm Beach that the captain started to advance the throttles up, and I'm thinking, I don't think we got the salute, the wave off from the, and we all kind of, both the engineer and I yelled stop, no, and then sure enough they were still connected. And that would have been a mess. That would have been some injuries at a minimum and possibly fatalities. But so one of the things I did was when the tug driver disconnected and they were doing all the things that they do, when they backed off far enough, and I'd always say, three things: tug, tow bar, and personnel clear before, we started to move the airplane. It's just something that I always did just to make sure that. And there was one time, apparently they needed the tow bar for another airplane at a gate next door. And so when they were disconnecting everything, which I couldn't see, one of them took the tow bar, disconnected from the tug, and just started moving in that direction toward the other gate. And so I saw a tug, but no tow bar. And I did see the personnel out of the way. And I'm thinking, huh? And then I think my first officer was able to spot out of his window and back a little bit that the tow bar, there was a guy, one of our guys was, had the tow bar and then was heading over toward the other gate. But that got my attention. Anyway, interesting scenario. Sadly, we're probably never going to know unless somebody listening happens to work at Boise and, knows a little bit more information about how exactly this happened and, if there was any damage to the airplane or whatever.
Yep.
All right. Back to 1B. And Nick, anytime you need to go.
I probably need to bail out of here. So
okay.
Sorry I can't stay longer, but it was good to chat for a little bit.
Yeah, we're so happy that you were here to join us for a little bit.
Yep.
Nice to see you, Nick.
All right. We'll see you guys next time. See you.
Cheers.
Bye. So are you getting any kind of weird video or audio from me?
No.
Okay. I'm not sure why, but I'm looking at, well, I mean, I always send out weird vibes. But no, it's just like I'm looking at the window for StreamYard and I'm seeing my image and I'm just kind of like, like freeze frame jerky kind of. The audio so far has been fine for everybody coming into me and from what I hear of myself. But yeah. Yeah, in fact, now your audio, Liz, is coming in a little bit weird. I don't know why.
Is your computer overheating again?
Yeah. Well, what I'm showing is about 50%, 53, 58% CPU.
Yeah, that's.
And I'm just looking at the individual applications to see what's taking up so much. And it doesn't look like anything is really taking up much at all. So I don't know what's happening. It's just worse than it's ever been, although the audio that I'm getting in from you all is fine. But I think it's
okay,
not.
I'm seeing your video just a tiny bit jerky. It's just.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And I think you could have made your tow bar checks a little more alliterative by saying tug, tow bar, and troops, but that's just me.
Yeah, I wasn't really into alliteration back then, Nick, but now I would. Yeah, I would probably do that. I think. Good point. Good point. But I wasn't thinking show titles back then in those days.
Probably not. Probably not.
Yeah. Okay. Hang on. Let me think about what I want to do here. I don't want to shut everything off because if I do, then that means I'm going to have to do like a whole new. No, wait. I could probably come back. You guys would still be there as long as you didn't shut down and leave. You ain't going anywhere? Oops. What?
That's all right.
It will screw up the recording, the backup recording on StreamYard, sort of. But right now, I've had the normal recorder going the entire time, and as far as I know, that looks good from what I can see visually. So I'm thinking that maybe I need to do a restart on my machine just to. And the other thing, what I'm using for my machine is my laptop, which is a MacBook Air, and it doesn't have a fan. Let me look at the temperature to see if that's.
Oh, there's plenty of fans in the chat room.
Oh, okay. Well, then that can't be it. Obviously, my network is fine. Where's the one that talks about the temperature? Battery, disks, network. Sorry, everybody. I just don't want to get to the point where it just ruins everything. Yeah, all the CPU loads and all the active applications aren't really high at all. I can't see on this any temperatures on this application. So let me quit that and then do the other one that I use sometimes. Can't spell. iStat menus. That gives me some temperature indication. The reason why I'm mentioning temperature is that the MacBook Pro without the fans, I'm not the MacBook Pro, the MacBook Air without the fans, if it starts to get too hot, then it starts throttling back the CPU. to keep the temperatures.
Yes, that might be the cause.
Yep. Sensors. Let me turn that on. I know this is kind of boring for everybody. Sorry. 22 degree. What? I don't see it on my menu. Interesting. What does he say? Oh, yeah. iHall Boxes says, is it getting hot because of OnlyFans? Yeah, that might be the problem. Turn off the OnlyFans. Maybe things will cool down a little bit. Well, that's weird. It's been a while since I've used iStat menus, and I don't, it's supposed to be in my top menu bar, and I don't see anything up there. I know I just started it up. Let me try it again. iStat menus, open. Okay, sensors is on. Yeah, I don't see them. That's not telling me information about my sensors. Temperature sensors. What would be CPU core average? I apologize, everybody. Yeah, I don't see them showing up. I probably need an update or something like that. So let me quit that. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to leave you all, and I'm going to restart everything, and then hopefully I'll be back and everything will have returned to normalcy. Yeah. Okay. So
Okay.
leaving
Well, I'll
studio.
just nip out and go to the loo while you're doing that.
Okay. And then can we put some kind of interlude movie? Okay. Leave studio.
You put me in charge. They made a big mistake. Yeah, I'm gonna say. So I've got some spicy chili and herb, pure cheese crisps, chips. Any tequila bars? Well, yes. I was going to make the flippant comment that all this talk of bars, I've had to open a beer, but I didn't get round to that. Yes, I'm hoping they would have noticed the tow truck if they'd kept it attached as this. Perhaps he's put an ice cube on his computer and he's waiting for it to cool down. These are very noisy. Yes, these are very noisy, these are, so I apologise. Oh. A toe tag. Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. Oh, indeed. These are spicy. Wow. Wow, that's right. They're hot. Good idea. I'm interested. Oh. God, they're deadly, these things. Liz, on 1B, it's got the title and then a little description. Then there's a clip source by Simon Radecki, etc. And then I've got 4 lines which just says unable to load. Any idea what they are? So I'm unable to load those videos. That's fine. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Super. It's a long old
Hello.
Report. Hello.
Yeah, I unlatched from Unity. And looks like everything is better so far.
Yeah,
as
your
far as my
videos.
video.
Yeah, video's working fine.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Captain Crunch. Wasn't that Wacky Races or something? Captain Crunch?
Well, we have a cereal
Or Catch
here
the
in
Pigeon.
the U.S.
Oh,
called
do you?
Captain Crunch.
Okay.
Yeah. Or actually, it's not Captain Crunch. It's Cap'n, C-A-P''N.
Cap'n. Very nice.
Captain Crunch.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's the way they do it. Play. And then let's take this thing and make it a smaller window. And then go over here and Crunchy. Oh, that's why they're calling him Captain Crunch. I heard Liz's end of the conversation, and but I didn't hear what was going on. But now I get it. Let's see. Yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. Share screen, window. I mean, everything goes away when you restart. I had to stop it and restarted it, and it looks like it is recording. But thank you for checking, because that would be bad if it weren't. And then we have this to the stage, and that's from the Pakistani thing. So that's ready to go. Oh boy. And then let me just make this a separate window so I can see you guys. Okay. All right. I think we're back in business. Sorry for that, everybody. Technical details or issues. Okay. And I opened up the I had the MacBook Air with the top down, and so now I have it opened. So I'm thinking, well, maybe that'll help keep it cooler.
Well, you never know.
Never know, but so far so good. Okay. And I usually run my monitor at a higher resolution, so I've knocked that down to the built-in or default resolution. So all my windows are bigger, which is helpful for a 65-year-old to see everything, but it just makes everything harder to kind of keep organized. So I've got things going all over the place here. Okay, yeah, not that any of you care, but
I care.
Okay.
Yeah, we care.
All right. Well, I suppose we should continue on with this next news item from Aviation Herald, and it's the final report for a crash that occurred in a Pakistani Air A320 at Karachi on the 22nd of May in 2020. We did cover it. Yeah, we covered it a lot back then, Liz. It impacted a residential area during final approach. Both engines failed as a result of a gear-up touchdown. Or I believe Juan Brown on the Blancolirio YouTube channel referred to it as a scrape and go. And that's exactly what they did. They scraped their engines on the runway because they apparently didn't realize that their landing gear wasn't down. And
I don't know how they could have not realized, because the airplane was screaming at them.
Yeah, so
there you go.
So Nick, why don't you give us a breakdown or like a summary of how this whole thing started and what led to the pilot crew getting we use this term a lot, being behind the aircraft or being with the aircraft or optimally being ahead of the airplane, like always thinking ahead. You driving out there.
These poor folks, no, they were way behind there.
Like when you're driving your car, and I know you all know this phenomena. Where you're driving and you see somebody like behind you, and that they want to pass you, but you can clearly see, okay, there's a car in front of me. There's nowhere for me to go because I'm in this line of cars in the fast lane, we call it here. I'm not sure what probably the passing lane for you all in other parts of the world. And then like the reason why we're there and we're not going any faster is because we can see ahead. Because we're looking ahead. We're ahead of the car. We can see that there are cars in this next lane over, and you see the person behind you, and they move over into this lane thinking that they're going to get around you. And then you're looking, well, how is this going to work out? I mean, I can clearly see that there's a car there. Do people not understand physics, or are they only looking 20 feet ahead of their car, or what? But anyway, so the term, being ahead of the car or being ahead of the airplane is so important for safe operations. And I know I'm stealing your thunder, Nick, but this
not Joe.
So we talked about this before we started recording today, and I told Liz. I said this final report would have been so much easier, and instead of 160 pages or whatever the heck it is, 160 pages for this final investigation report. If they had just listed the things that this crew had done properly and done correctly, it would only be at like 1 or 2 pages, or maybe half a page. It would have been so much easier. But that's just to say that I have never seen a mess like this in my entire life. That how this piloting crew could get so far behind the airplane and then not use any of the opportunities that were presented to them and people trying to help them, just disregarding it all and saying, no, damn it, we're going to get this thing on the ground. Just you wait and see. And in fact, I think the captain made that comment, boy, wait and see what, how we're going to get through this, or how I'm going to, I don't know exactly what the words were. I think the quote is in the final report. Do you remember exactly the term, the words that he used?
No, I don't, Jeff. But he makes some facetious remark about, you watch this, like, hold my beer.
Hold my beer. I'm going to impress the pants off these people.
Yeah.
They impressed. He impressed them, not in a positive way though. So now I'll shut up and I'll let Nick take over, please.
Well, okay. So these boys were inbound to Karachi in the A320, and it was a pretty standard day for them. They were not particularly tired and nothing really was going wrong. But one thing that we noted throughout this was their use of the standard procedures of making an action, acknowledging it, calling changes to the modes that they were in, all that sort of standard phraseology and standard double checking and good CRM that we use was completely absent from this flight deck. There was no proper briefing. There was no discussion of how they were going to organize their descent into Karachi. There was nothing. The first officer was flying it, but he was also doing the radio. Now, that's normally the job of the pilot monitoring, who this day was the captain. But for some reason, they put all the work in the first officer's seat. So he was doing all the work and the radios, and the captain was just sitting back and watching it all happen. So I'll just describe the arrival. Now, their arrival came in over a waypoint and then did a kind of a dog leg, which more or less lined them up with the runway, and then they passed over a point called Mackley. Now, as they approached this very first waypoint, they weren't given the standard arrival. They were given a direct routing to Mackley. Now, that obviously cut some track miles because they planned on doing a dogleg. So they've now got less distance than they had before, and they're up in the mid-30s. And they put in the direct track, and the first officer sets the autopilot up to do a managed descent. There's 2 types of descent you can do in the Airbus. One is called an open descent, when you select the altitude you're going to go down to and you pull the knob towards you. That's an open descent. And basically the engines come back to idle and the airplane goes down at whatever speed that you have selected. And it will just go on that blind, unmonitored descent path. A managed descent, the equipment looks ahead to look at the constraints on your arrival and the heights you're required to be at various places, and controls you on a glide path, a descent path that tries to keep the engines close to idle, because that's obviously good for fuel consumption, but controls the rate at which you descend to arrive at the various waypoints at the correct height according to what you've put into the FMS, the flight management system, the box that we all program. And because they cut some miles off, the managed descent they put in was going to take them into a holding pattern over Mackley, where they would go round whilst continuing their descent until they reached 3,000 feet. Now, that's what the box thought they should do, and that's what the arrival procedure required them to do. So they set off down. As they came down towards this holding pattern, which is, I think, about 15, 20 miles away from the airport, They're, around 9,500 feet, somewhere around there. They're going to leave that waypoint at 3,000 feet. So they're about 6,000 and a bit feet high at this point. Now, rather than letting the airplane go into the holding pattern whilst they descended down, the captain said, "Oh no, we're not going to do that. We're going to carry on straight in." And this is when air traffic started saying, "You're a bit high to get the aircraft down at this distance." So the captain and the first officer really ignored it. Mainly the captain. He just refused to let them do anything other than continue to point at the airfield. And the first officer was struggling to get the height down. So eventually they were about twice as high as they should have been. They're very fast because they're trying to get the height off, so keeping their indicated airspeed up high is essential. They put a bit of flap out, they put the gear down, and they have got the nose buried. It's more than twice the normal sort of descent path. In fact, the approach path is so steep at one point that the automatic protections in the Airbus that won't allow the nose to go lower in this particular phase of flight than about 13.5 degrees activates and stops them from continuing to make this very steep descent. But the fact is they're still remaining very high above the glide path. They're so close to the limiting speeds of the flap and gear that they keep getting warnings that they're overspeeding, particularly the flaps. How much do you want me to continue on? Because I'm not really doing this from memory at the moment, Jeff, rather than
no. I mean, this is good.
This.
I like the way you're doing it because you're giving us the generalized picture of what's happening and what the setup is for the event that made this a tragedy.
Absolutely. So when they get to about 15 miles, they should have been, if they're on a 3-degree glide slope, 15 miles, they should have been about 5,000 feet. They're more than twice that high. So, but they're coming down towards the glide path. Their automatics have locked onto the localizer, so they're lined up with the runway, and they're well above the glide path. Now, when you're trying to lock on to the glide path from above, you're supposed to do it in a selected rate of descent in the Airbus. You're not. Well, they were just doing it in open descent with this very high glide. So they're just ignoring the limitations on what they're supposed to be doing. And that's just an Airbus thing. It leads to a possible dangerous scenario that didn't actually happen because they're going so damn fast, but it can do. The thing about an instrument landing system that we're all cautious of is there's not only one beam that your instrument landing system can lock onto, particularly worried there about glide slope. There are false beams that are generated by the aerial. There's a very strong main beam, but above it about main beams at 3 degrees, above it at 6 degrees, and above that at 9 degrees, there are these false beams. Now,
if Miami Rick were here, he'd go into all the lobes and everything else.
Indeed, and they're not on the end of your ears. So they, as they're coming down, desperately trying to get this airplane down to the glide slope, they actually pick up a 6-degree false glide slope, which starts guiding them in towards the runway. But they're still desperate to try and make it onto the ground. Now, air traffic are still trying to encourage them to take an orbit because they can see that they're uncomfortably high and very fast on the approach, carrying way too much energy to make this. And if any of us had a stabilized approach criteria, you'd have to throw it entirely out of the window to be able to continue, and they did. They barrel on down, still very fast, and having trouble configuring the aircraft because they're going so fast, and they're configuring it very late because of the speeds. Eventually, the controller says, I'm going to turn you away and give you an orbit. So he tries to turn them to the south. The first officer is very keen to do this because I think he's recognized at this point that he's got to have some more room to get rid of the energy he's got. So he wants to turn. The captain refuses to let him. He takes over control of the aircraft manually and turns them back on. But during that maneuver, I think the first officer decided that if they're going to do an orbit, he shouldn't do it with his gear down. He should raise his gear. So there is we're not absolutely certain how this happened. He decided to raise the gear. And this is the sort of thing, they're not coordinating any of this. He's not getting confirmation from his captain as to what's going on. They're not making standard calls. They're reaching over and moving stuff without confirming with the other crew member. So we think the first officer raised the gear at this point, but the captain refused to let that happen, turned it back on, and without realizing that the gear perhaps had been raised. And this is all what Jeff has said. He and they're both so far behind the airplane that they're getting completely fixated. And when the airplane starts screaming at them that they're too low gear, that their sink rate is too high, that there's terrain ahead, they're coming down so fast towards the runway that it sees it as a terrain possible collision, and that they're completely ignoring
They don't hear it.
all this. No.
Their brains aren't even like hearing these things because they're so focused on, getting this thing on the ground.
Yeah.
When Nick, when you said they offered to give them sir, orbit is available if you want. The captain says, negative, sir. We are comfortable. We can make it, inshallah, which I think means probably if God, God willing, or if it's the will of God. Exactly. And then later, I found the quote from him. The captain said, quote, "He will be surprised what we have done." Yes. And it's true. We were, absolutely, and everybody was surprised at what they have done. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. For those of us who regularly flew our ILSs or still do, you'll recognize the fact that they did this entire approach. They were more than 2 dots high, and that's more or less a full deflection of the ILS beam saying fly down, because you're not on the glide slope. They come barreling down towards the runway. They arrive over the runway some, 60 or 70 knots fast, without the gear down, with all the GPWS warnings screaming at them. And they sit there at about 10 feet over the runway. And eventually, about halfway down, the captain pushes forward. He's trying to put the airplane on the ground. The first officer is trying to tell him that they need to go around, so he's pulling back. And we've got completely conflicting control inputs at this point. So in the Airbus, you've got to press a button because the Airbus will tell you when you're both trying to fly it independently of each other. It'll say dual input. The captain managed to press his command override button so that his stick was now the master, and it cut off the first officer's stick, and he pushed the airplane down onto the ground until the engines struck the runway. So he's skidding along on both engines, wearing away the bottom of the pods, and at that point, I think discretion is probably the best part of valor, and he kind of concedes the fact that they're going to have to go around. Of course, he really has no idea of the damage he is doing to the engines at this point. So he puts the power on, and they start climbing away. Now, the thing is, at the bottom of the engines, of the cowlings in that area are where the gearboxes are, and all the time the cowlings have been rubbing along on the runway. They have been destroying both of the gearboxes, which has allowed all the oil to escape, and as they climb away, they start getting a number of warnings indicating they have now got engine problems. Now, I can't remember exactly what the indications they had. Jeff, can
Just about everything, every indication you could possibly get.
They lost their generators. They lost oil pressure. I'm not quite sure. I think one engine certainly failed completely. Anyway, they managed to climb around. They were cleared into the visual circuit, as it were, and they started trying to fly around the airport to make another approach, which they sort of got most of the way around before both engines failed. And without any recourse, the aircraft just disappeared into the city and very sadly exploded with tragic consequence.
Yes.
So how do you get yourself in this kind of a situation, Jeff? What would you have to happen between those two pilots for this to become such an appalling emergency?
That first officer, you could kind of sense that he was trying to follow the instructions and take the outs that the air traffic controllers were giving them, but flying with this overbearing, bullying type of captain that said, no, this is the way we're going to do it. I don't, maybe the co-pilot, the first officer, wasn't brand new. I mean, he had almost 3,000 hours total time and 1,500 on the airplane or something in that range. I don't know. So I made a couple of notes when you were starting this whole thing, and I'm trying to put myself in this situation. So they're up there at cruise, and it's not a long flight, right? I mean, it's not a super Lahore to Karachi.
It's short haul stuff,
pretty short, short little segment. They get involved in conversation, and I'm not sure exactly. I'm sure the transcripts are there, and we can find out exactly what they were talking about. I think they were talking about COVID-19 and flying and how it's affected the airline and passenger loads and that kind of thing. That's the kind of thing that they were having a discussion about. But they got so involved in their conversation, they weren't paying attention to they were in this airplane flying at high speed and not paying attention to how close they were getting to the destination, not checking if the flight management computer was properly programmed, which it wasn't. I was going to say to you, Nick, I always look, even though the automation usually does a really good job of figuring out the track miles and descent paths and all that kind of stuff, I always, and I'm sure that you always did as well, used like rules of thumb. I mean, if I'm thinking, okay, I want to be about 30 nautical miles out at 10,000 feet above the ground for a typical 3-to-1 kind of a approach to the runway. A 3-to-1 line would be that 3-degree glide slope. And so I'm never completely trusting my flight management system to give me the ideal vertical navigation path. I'm always thinking, okay, are we really where we're supposed to be? Yeah. I've done the mental exercise, 30 out of 10 and all these various altitudes on the way down to make sure that it really jives with I'm seeing.
And had they been doing that, they probably would have done a height check at 15 miles over this waypoint and perhaps another one at 1,000 feet, which would have told them that they were on a spurious glide path. Because that's one of the reasons for doing those height checks, is to actually go, okay, am I on a correct path, a 3-degree path for the runway? Oh, hang on a minute, I'm not. I'm 6,000 feet when I should be at 3,000 feet, because that's the check height as we go over this waypoint. They never did any of those kind of essential airmanship style checks.
Not only that, they missed a radio frequency change when they were still I'm not saying way far, but they were still pretty up high, and in maybe the initial part of the descent, they were given a frequency change, and they misdialed or misinput the frequency. And so for, I don't know, a good period of time, it's in the report, they they weren't, and they never really made an attempt to contact the next controlling agency to get a positive communication check. Like, you make the call, you're checking in, you're passing so-and-so for so-and-so. And then if you don't get a response, then you go, well, why are they not talking to us? Maybe, okay. Yeah, it was 126.6 instead of 125.6. I misdialed the thing. So let me, and the controlling agencies are calling them, I think, 3 or 4 times. And then finally they use the guard 121.5 megahertz to call them and say, hey, you need to be on this frequency. So finally they get all that sorted out. But that's precious time that they're completely wasting. They're involved in this conversation. They're oblivious to how far behind the airplane they're getting. And at some point, I believe, Captain Nick, that this captain decides, well, I'm not going to be embarrassed by getting any of these helpful vectors or anything else. I'm going to make this happen so that I can show them what a man I really am and what a hero I am. Yeah.
And that's not Captain Jeff's opinion. That is the opinion of the psychologists who assessed him and are in the report, and also a result of the various reports, training reports written about this captain during his life. And they're quite damning. Including a suggestion that his initial psychological assessment, which he would have failed, he only passed because, being an ex-Air Force chap, and the Air Force doctors were the ones doing the assessment, he managed to influence this is, from sources, influence the report that was written about him. But all the way through, his training reports indicate that he was really an unsatisfactory captain who struggled with the technical data. He was considered to have a low level of intelligence. He didn't put the work in. And he compensated perhaps for this by being very arrogant and very aggressive and, just the sort of man who you don't want to have in command of an airplane. So he completely lacking in CRM and the sort of attitudes that are essential certainly in this day and age in order to run a big machine like an airliner.
Yeah. I mean, there were several times that they were getting these warnings. I mean, I can't imagine what it must have sounded like in that cockpit. All the overspeed warnings for the flaps and the gear and the everything. And there were several times that he instructed his first officer to cancel them. And in order to cancel several of these kind of warnings, you have to, I guess, go up to the panel. There's some kind of a special panel that emergency
there is
cancel.
At the front of the selectors to bring up the various system pages. There's a little button which is called emergency cancel, and it's only really supposed to be used if you get an erroneous warning coming through, and you actually have to lift a guard. And while that warning is activated, you press the emergency cancel, and that cuts it for the duration of that flight. And you only really use it if you're getting really annoying nuisance warnings from a system that is either working properly or is has already failed and you've already taken the actions, but every now and again that warning just pops up again. So you can cancel it, but you should never use it for anything else.
There were legitimate warnings. They were real warnings. There was nothing spurious and it was just talking about ignorance and arrogance. I mean, just to the, what do they call it? The setting 11 or whatever, going up to 11, but way above
the nth degree.
It's just it's so hard to read this. I mean, every single paragraph is like, what? Do they not see what's happening here? They have so much energy in this airplane. It's just impossible for them to get this thing down on the ground. And actually, I'm kind of not impressed, but I'm surprised that he was actually able to get this airplane to touch the runway. Had he had the gear down, maybe it would have even not touched down as far, because that would have been added drag that he would have had at his disposal. And then they would have landed, and we probably would never have known all the many, many, many things they did wrong, and procedures that they didn't do, and briefings they didn't have. It's just like any of you listening out there who are professional airline pilots are going, what? How can this happen in this day and age? Well, it did happen, and we now know the results of this kind of behavior.
There were
appalling.
99 souls on board. 97 were fatally injured. 2 passengers survived but sustained serious injuries. And I think they also killed some poor folk, 4 folk on the ground at the same time, because they crashed into a corner of the city.
It's really amazing they didn't kill more people on the ground. I mean, that densely populated area that they put it down on it's just incredible.
Yeah.
So few
now, the crew weren't the only areas to receive criticism in this very comprehensive accident report, but the whole training culture and the whole culture within PIA was also criticized in a lot of major areas. So the European community also immediately banned them from operating into Europe. I have no doubt that other countries made the same decision until they had, basically cleared all the problems out of their airline, and put sticking plasters over everything. I don't know. I'm sure they did a comprehensive review and did their best to fix all the problem areas, but it was quite remarkable.
All right. Well, final report. We're not going to hear anything else out of the investigatory agencies regarding this. I think that this is one of those things where there are just so many things that went wrong, and it's just talking about a wake-up call. And I'm glad that PIA were able to do a lot of corrective actions and that kind of thing to keep this kind of a tragedy from happening again. But oh my gosh, it leaves me without words trying to make sense of any of this. It's just what a senseless loss of so many lives.
I mean, just to highlight one more area, this obviously was an appallingly unstable approach. Didn't come close to any of the normal stabilized approach procedure. No. But although they had all the data available to them, the airline was not using that data. So when they eventually looked back over the preceding year or two at unstable approaches, they found that there was a very poor record of captains, not just this captain, but this captain was one of the contributors, of continuing approaches when they were badly unstable. So there was a culture building up in this airline. Not only were they flying without care, unstable approaches, there was very poor CRM, there were autocratic captains, there were all sorts of the things that we managed to get out of most of the bad airlines decades ago, but they were still endemic in this airline, which I think was a dreadful situation.
Yeah, all these metrics now that we have on these modern airplanes, I mentioned it several times in the past when I was actively flying, where I can go to an app on my iPad, my EFB, and it in fact, it was almost scary. Like talking about Big Brother. I mean, like I go to this flight and I'm taxiing too fast, which is, can you believe it? I mean, that never happens. Or at the stabilized point, 1,000 feet, like how close was I to the stabilized approach parameters, and it shows you exactly what speeds on average you're flying for. It's just like, and the thing about it, and I mentioned this before, is that at first I was like a little like, I don't want to see, but what it made me do is when I would see what my parameters were, where I was touching down, in the touchdown zone, and then I was comparing myself to the average pilot at Delta or average pilot on the fleet at Delta. And then if I saw that I was not quite exactly where I should be there, it did have an effect on me. It made me think every time I was hitting those fixes, those points, that all this data was being based. I was thinking about it and trying my best to make sure that I was hitting all these parameters, because I was thinking next time I go in there and I want to see a positive trend for myself, that I'm getting my touchdown zone distance in line with where they want us to be, and my stabilized approach, and all these different things. It has I think for most of us, a very positive effect. It's not quite the gamification of what we were doing, but it's those measuring what we're doing and measuring us up against our peers. And that is that's peer pressure, basically. It's like the definition, right? Peer pressure. You have pressure to
absolutely.
be as much like your peers or better than your peers.
A very positive thing to have if you're in a highly demanding job, like being an airline pilot, Jeff, to continually strive to improve and to make sure that you're not the one letting everyone down.
Right. Wow. It just... by the way, we're going to link, and Nick mentioned it, and I believe I did as well. Juan Brown, Blanc Illyrio YouTube channel does a really, really good job of breaking this down.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And,
he goes into a lot more detail.
Right.
So he covers everything. But he, I think, like us, he's equally incensed by the dreadful situation that these two pilots got themselves into.
Right. So, Nick, we're a little over halfway through the show. We still have Getting to Know Us segment, and in addition to some feedback. So it's clear to me, looking at all the news items in our news notebook, that we're not going to be able to do justice to cover all of these things. But is there anything in particular in your review before we started recording that you're thinking, I really do want to cover this one? This is an important one for us to.
I wouldn't mind the TAP A320 problem with their reversers.
Okay, I agree with you. That was the one I was kind of leaning toward as well. And a lot of these are little things where you can knock them out pretty quickly. So we might be able to do this one and then maybe one or two more after that. And we can hold them over until the next episode. All right, this Liz just went, yee! She's happy. Yeah, but we never have to worry about getting enough news to talk about, sadly. I know. That's good, though. I like it. This from the Aviation Herald. By the way, just an aside, if you like these kind of incidents, accidents, this information out there, this website, Simon Radke does, he's an Austrian. It's amazing how much information he covers here and presents out there. And it's especially important for us who do an aviation podcast that talk about these things. You'll know that I think a majority of the information that we use to present to you these incidents and accidents and everything else come from the Aviation Herald. And if you appreciate what Simon does, go over to his website, avherald.com, and give him a couple of euros per month or whatever, just to kind of keep him motivated to keep doing this if you feel like that's something you might want to do. Anyway, just thought I'd put a plug in for supporting Simon, because without him and his website, we would have a lot less to talk about, I think. Yeah. All right. Final report. This was a TAP Air Portugal A320 200. They were performing flight 754 from Lisbon to Copenhagen, Denmark, with 102 passengers and 7 crew. Landing on Copenhagen's runway 30 at about 12:05 local time, so midday, when, according to ADS-B data transmitted by the aircraft veered to the left. The speed over the ground reduced sharply from 133 to 120 knots. The crew initiated a go-around. The aircraft, however, did not climb, but also did not build up speed. With the airport perimeter and houses of the local community in the way, the aircraft began to slowly climb and crossed the first houses at around 300 feet above ground. The speed over the ground further reduced to 101 knots. Once the aircraft had climbed to about 900 feet above ground, the airspeed began to build up again. The aircraft leveled off at 3,000 feet MSL. I think, what was the field elevation there? Not sure exactly what the delta is between field elevation and above the ground. But anyway, they got up to 3,000 feet MSL and accelerated at normal speeds. The aircraft subsequently positioned for another approach to 22 left this time, which I believe
it's
is
800 feet.
800
feet.
So 2,200 feet above the ground would be where 3,000 MSL would be. They landed without further incident. They used the longer runway 22 left, for their final landing. Ground witnesses. Now, this is something that we talk about a lot, that witnesses on the ground sometimes see things that perhaps aren't factual, but their brains, they're not purposely trying to misrepresent things, but they're the way our human brains work. We're convinced that this is what we saw. They saw the left wing hit the runway, and then maybe even the left-hand engine making contact with the runway. And then after that turn, the aircraft turned to the left, nearly collided with an antenna. Simon says it appears to be the glide slope antenna for runway 12, and nearly hit some buildings before the aircraft finally managed to climb out safely. Sources at the airport report the left-hand engine's reverser was damaged. Okay, this is all, this happened in 2022, April 8th of 2022. So right away, Denmark's Accident Investigation Board started investigating this.
What's that board called, Jeff?
Oh, it's called the Haverikommissionen. Why don't you have a go at it?
It's called HCL.
Oh, okay. There you go. That's much. You did that so much better than I did. And I think I have. I think I have a sound effect, or not like a that. Here, let me see if I can find it. I should have done that before I covered this. Just knowing you and making me not letting me skip over. How do you haver? Oh, I think I got it.
Statens Havarikommisjon for Transport.
Did you hear
very
that?
Good.
Yeah.
Your voice changes when you say that.
Every time I see those words, I get a little stressed out, and my voice just automatically goes up a little bit. I'm stressed right now.
Statens Havarikommisjon for Transport.
Okay, I'm feeling more relaxed now. Yeah, where's that one? We haven't heard that one in a while. Oh, okay. Yeah, never mind. Okay. So I'm so easily distracted. They opened up an investigation. Preliminary results suggest there was no abnormal ground contact, like wing or engine pod strike, and the aircraft remained undamaged. The HCL subsequently clarified that there are no visual indications or marks indicating the wing or engine made ground contact. Okay, we got that out of the way. Let's see. On the 19th of April, they released a statement saying, well, you know what? Let me go down to an area of this report that gives us a little bit more succinct idea of what happened here. Basically, the weather was not ideal. The winds were gusty winds, and the first attempt at landing on runway 30 was, in the captain's opinion, not ideal because of the gusty wind conditions. Commander felt uncomfortable with the aircraft attitude when it was touching down, and decided, after thrust reversers had been selected, to abort the landing. Sorry, I should have silenced my phone. Okay. The commander moved the thrust levers fully forward. This is an Airbus. Selected toga thrust, which deviated from the procedure in the FCOM, stipulating that once thrust reversers had been selected, the landing had to be completed. So the commander had already touched down, activated or moved the thrust levers into REV. Is that like a little bit further back than idle, Captain Nick, on an Airbus?
To get the thrust reversers, you have the throttles at idle. You reach over them to another set of levers that are on the back of the throttles, which are now easily to get to since the levers are idle. And you grab those and lift them.
Okay, so it's very similar to what that I'm used to then. As well. And so so the point is that all of it's ingrained in. I assumed all of us that once you come in contact with a runway, the landing gear's down. Is on the runway, and you're derotating, and you have the power back at idle. Then you move the reverse levers to the reverse position. Once you've done that, you have basically said to the world, "Okay, we're committed now. We can't go around. We are committed to keeping this thing on the ground, and we have to deal with whatever we're dealt with at this point." However, apparently that wasn't ingrained in this commander, and because of the fact that he was uncomfortable with the aircraft's attitude, he decided to go around. And if everything works exactly the way it's supposed to, that may have worked out just fine, and we wouldn't be looking at this final report. So what happened is, when he did that, the engine number 2 thrust reverser stowed, and the engine number 2 accelerated. Okay, that's the way it's supposed to work. Engine 1 thrust reverser, the left side, did not stow. ECU, engine control unit number 1, commanded engine number 1 to auto idle, okay, which is a smart thing. You don't want to be advancing thrust on an engine that still has the reversers out and it senses that you're no longer on the ground. The commander experienced difficulties in controlling and achieving the maximum capabilities of the aircraft, but managed to regain control. The aircraft continued climbing. Flight crew shut down engine number 1 to regain better control of the aircraft. Yeah, if you can't stow thrust reverse, then the best thing to do after you have the airplane under control is to shut down that engine, and you're going to get much better handling characteristics out of the engine. The AIB safety investigation identified that the engine number 1 thrust reverser did not stow, since the ECU number 1 did not receive a ground signal at that same time. A thrust lever number 1 position signal changed from reverse to forward thrust. So the logic of all this I guess it just all got confused, huh, Captain Nick? It didn't know what to make of anything there?
It's a very interesting series of logical decisions. Now, the engines do this independently. Number 1, engine ECU makes its decisions about whether I can stow or not the reversers, and the number 2 engine makes a separate decision. It all depends on whether when they're trying to make that decision, whether the weight on wheels is active or not. Now, the aircraft was sort of wobbling around, and the wheels were making contact and breaking contact with the ground. Now, the commander actually selected thrust reverse. He selected idle thrust at 10 feet, and then maximum thrust reverse approximately 3 seconds later. So he was sort of in the process of touching down a little bit earlier than most guys would do it. Most guys don't select thrust reverse until they feel the airplane settle onto the runway. But at the time of selecting maximum thrust reverse, the left-hand main gear wheel has started to spin up, indicating ground contact, and derotation had been initiated, but the shock absorbers hadn't yet compressed, so the weight on wheels proximity sensors hadn't activated. Now, it was a bit odd. I'm trying to look for that little bit about the logic, Jeff, if...
see if I can find it.
Yeah. So it might be here. Due to various computing factors, the number 1 engine received an air signal, while the number 2 engine received a ground signal. Therefore, number 2 engine latched the stow command. So it activated the stow command and said, right, we're going to stow. And the of the number 2 thrust reversers, whilst the number 1 engine did not latch that stow command due to the confusing difference between them receiving the weight on wheel signal. The result was an interruption of the stow sequence on reverser number 1 once the aircraft was off the ground and the weight on wheel signal was no longer present. Now, Jeff and I both thought about this, and we thought, well, that kind of slightly defies logic, because if you're trying to stow the thrust reversers and you don't have the aircraft on the ground, that you should be allowed to do that. But the logic, I think, was that they don't want the thrust reversers to move. Once you're in the air, they just stay where they are. And if they were deployed, then the engine is going to go to idle, so you will be, you'll be saved the dramatic and often uncontrollable effect of having power going to the thrust reversers whilst the aircraft's trying to fly, particularly when it's in a low energy situation as they were. And what I will do is commend the captain, because he isn't just dealing with a single engine situation now, because don't forget his number 1, his left engine has been forced to auto idle and is providing him no power. Even that idle thrust reverse is providing some thrust, but it's all being deflected forward by the thrust reverser. So not only is he single engine, he's actually got more drag than you would normally expect on that left engine, and he's at very low speed. And what's more, he's not getting, because of this confusion as to whether the aircraft's on the ground or in the air, he's not getting his usual beta target. Now, those of us who are used to the old-fashioned ball and slip, it's the ball equivalent, an Airbus ball. Trying to avoid going from that's what she said. So it's the Airbus equivalent, because it takes in more data than just slip and slide. So it also is basically the target that gives you the most efficient single engine climb out attitude in yaw that you need. And sometimes it demands a little bit of wing down as well. So anyway, he didn't get that target. So he's not putting quite as much rudder on as he might have otherwise done so. But even with that very limited performance, in the difficult conditions he was in, he managed to fly the aircraft away from the ground, and they basically saved everyone on board. I know a lot of pilots who probably wouldn't have had the skill to do that. No. So even though he incorrectly rejected this landing after he'd deployed the thrust reversers, having done that and ended up in this awful situation, he did a damn good job of getting the airplane safely away from the ground. And once they were at about 1,200 feet above the airfield, they managed to shut that engine down and then complete a single engine circuit. Now, out of interest, Airbus looked at the logic of these, and they said, actually, that logic has been superseded on all the Airbuses after these type engines in these A320s, and also the same problem would have been present on the A340 that I flew. So they said, yeah, okay, we sort of recognized, but it's such a remote possibility that this was going to occur and out of 95 million landings or something that these airplanes have done, this was the only occurrence. But despite that, they have gone ahead and loaded on the change the ECU logic on these aircraft, I believe, or it's certainly being recommended.
The AIB considers a modification of the CFM56 ECU software to be the most effective safety barrier against thrust reversers not stowing during aborted landings. They recommend aviation authorities to mandate the embodiment once the modified ECU software is available.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think Airbus thought, well, we'll write it in the manuals. You're not allowed to do this, and they didn't consider the case that somebody would eventually, I'm gonna try this. I don't like this landing. I'm gonna cancel the thrust reverse and try and get away with it. And then also have this disagreement between the different weight on wheels indications. So, but now Airbus, I think the AIB are quite correct. You try as much as possible to take into account every possible scenario, because considering the number of flights your aircraft going to perform over the 20 or 30 years they're going to be airborne, eventually someone's going to do everything.
Yep. Lowest common denominator, right?
Yeah,
you have to plan for that to be a completely safe operation. And even then, sometimes that's not enough. But you can only
a fascinating
do so
incident,
much.
wasn't it? Fascinating.
Yeah, I agree with you. The captain's skill with that particular situation. Yeah, he did the wrong thing, but his flying skills were top notch, and he was able to keep the airplane from crashing. So, yeah. Well, thank you for helping me with that, Captain.
No, you did a great job.
Well, 1H I think is an interesting thing to talk about quickly. JetBlue is offering, and mainly because Radio Roger in our intro mentioned it, so we should probably mention it too. The JetBlue is offering buyout packages to non-union employees. Now, I believe when JetBlue started out, the pilot groups were all non-union, but I think in the last year or two, they actually voted in a union, but apparently it's not a requirement to represent all pilots. Not sure. Anyway, they had offered their pilots compensation to take the month of April off. Per Josh Jemvik on Twitter, the airline offered no fly but paid incentives for April. This allows the pilots to get paid about 2/3 of their standard monthly compensation for not flying. The airline offered this incentive to nearly 350 pilots. JetBlue has too many pilots for its proposed schedule during April. Because of this, the airline officially offered 350 pilots, to take the month off, but get 67% of your pay. They're looking for over 200 captains and nearly 100 first officers to take the month of April off. So now you may think, well, weren't they one of the airlines involved in this potential merger with Spirit? Yeah, Spirit and JetBlue were trying to merge together, and then we talked about this a couple of episodes ago that the U.S. Justice Department took a look at it and said, nope, that's not going to be an ideal thing for consumers. So we're going to say, no, you can't do that. So we've talked about some of the after effects of that decision, and this obviously is one of those. Their staffing wasn't quite, accurate enough for their current passenger loads and that kind of thing. So it doesn't say anything beyond the month of April. Hopefully that will help with their financial situation and profitability. Yeah. Oh. And I was wondering when I was looking at the note, Liz is saying there's another story here in this note. The little image attached to the one that said JetBlue is offering some pilots paid leave, but it had a picture of a Southwest 737. And I'm thinking, well, that's typical, the way journalists just slam up every. Yeah, I understand now that Liz put the two together, and it just shows the Southwest image in our little thumbnail. Southwest is slamming the brakes on new pilot hiring, according to an internal memo first revealed by aviation insider John NYC, or ex-John NYC, on the social media site X. Southwest's, I didn't say it. Southwest's Vice President of Flight Operations, Lee Kinnebrew, told pilots on Wednesday that the airline had taken the difficult decision to suspend initial training classes. Now, I bet he didn't say they have taken they would have said we made the difficult decision to suspend initial training classes for new hire first officers from April through to the end of 2024. This is from Paddle Your Own Canoe, and Matus Mazinski, or however you pronounce his name, is not a U.S. guy using our terms and lingo. Over the past few weeks, we've closely analyzed different options for our pilot hiring plan based on expected capacity growth beyond 2024. These options include consideration from what we have learned in previous periods of overstaffing and how it negatively impacted pilot schedule quality and earning ability. We've also evaluated the impacts on our training center and prioritization of operating efficiently, the memo continued. The decision to pause the new pilot hiring shouldn't come as a huge surprise, given that Southwest is expecting a significant slowdown in deliveries of the new Boeing 737 MAX, following increased regulator scrutiny of the beleaguered aircraft manufacturer. Last month, Southwest revealed that it now only expected to take delivery of 79 MAX aircraft, down from a previous target of 85. Southwest has also completely removed the MAX 7 model from its fleet plans for 2024, owing to continuing certification delays. And we talked about some of the issues with getting the MAX 7 certified, and they finally said, okay, just forget about that for now. We have too many other things to worry about. There's an old rhyme about for the want of a nail, the shoe was lost, and for the want of the shoe, the horse went lame, etc. That leads on to the fact that a great king lost a battle. It's incredible to think that 4 bolts have such a ramification. Leaving those 4 bolts out of that door plug, the Boeing or the Spirit assembly plant that build Boeing's aircraft was going to reflect right down through the industry, so that probably hundreds of pilots who were looking forward to their first decent job on an airline have now had their plans wrecked. They've been thrown into turmoil by those 4 damn bolts that were probably left sitting on someone's bench in that factory. And, it just really annoys me, because that one lapse has just created havoc within the industry. Well, it has had a jaded history, has it not? The MAX series of 737s.
Yeah, it seems to be a bit, it's cursed. I don't hate to say it.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, and then finally, we'll end the news segment with item number D, or 1D. And we've talked about this, talked about Ops Group, International Ops Group, and
great
SAFO from the FAA, talking about this GPS spoofing, and not only doing GPS spoofing, but apparently they're also, and I've also read about this, as you have as well, Captain Nick, in the Ops Group daily briefings, the communications, attempting to hack air traffic control communications in that area of the world, especially over North Africa and specifically the country of Somalia. Hostile elements attempted to take over the communication network of an El Al plane. Now that, what is the source here? airlive.net. That's not accurate. They didn't try to take over the communication network of an El Al plane. What they did was they used the existing communication networks to transmit to aircraft using their own transmitters, which were not official air traffic controllers, and using official air traffic control equipment. So an El Al plane flying from Phuket to Ben Gurion Airport on Saturday night, they tried to convince it to divert it from its destination. And during the incident, instructions were given to the crew that were different from their set route, raising concerns that someone was trying to damage the plane or lead it to dangerous areas, maybe even to conduct a kidnapping. The crew disobeyed the instructions and quickly switched to alternative means of communication. Probably what, CPDLC, I'm guessing?
Yeah, that's right. That's the data link system that we can use to communicate on long flights. And so it's a bit like sending a text message between the air traffic controller and your aircraft. So
that's
these
much
guys
harder to hack.
Yeah, these guys were probably got hold of an HF radio and they found the control frequency, and they started passing bogus instructions, not just to El Al, but to a number of aircraft that were flying through that piece of airspace. And pretty soon the crews recognized that these were false instructions. And with the aid of CPDLC from the controller on the ground warning them and their own nous, they decided to just change their method of communication. And almost instantaneously, the ops group came up with warnings, and that's one of the great advantages of having something as flexible and as quick responding as ops group, and they can advise people of this occurrence and the best way to get around the problem, the extent of it, etc. So it's a great source of good information.
Yeah, and it really helps us as a podcast, aviation podcast, to keep up with what is happening in areas of the world that I've never been to in my life, or if I have, it's been decades since. So it's really a nice source of information for us here at APG. So we'd like to thank those folks for our membership in their organization. And the other thing I was going to say is that over my many, many years of flying and listening to radio communications, you can almost immediately figure out that when somebody is communicating that is not, the real air traffic controller or whatever, it's all, I mean, even if they're using the exact right terminology, sometimes it's just like you get this feeling like this does not sound right. This does not sound like legitimate communications. And I mean, wouldn't you agree, Captain Nick?
Oh, absolutely. You become so used to the general phraseology and even the way it changes from country to country. So that, I've been through this country before and this guy sounds like this and he often gives these commands. And when you get something out of the ordinary like that, it really does make you go, ooh, okay, I'm going to have to think about that before I do that. Because they were trying to get aircraft to climb and descend into levels that were already occupied. So, there was the potential for something nasty to happen. Luckily, we've all got our TCAS, which is our last-ditch defense against a collision. But, you just got to be on the ball. And of course, flying through these areas, the aircraft tend to use a separate frequency to transmit their position reports, etc., and give warnings of their actions if they're going to climb and descend. And that's a VHF frequency that goes just between the aircraft. So as in addition to receiving instructions from air traffic, you're also actually talking to all the other aircraft in your area, telling them of your actions, so that the chances of something untoward occurring were remote. But you've just got to be on your guard. This sort of thing has happened in other countries, and now it's happening in this very touchy area around here. So,
I haul boxes in our live audience says, why is this controller sounding like he's in the middle of some African fish market? Makes you wonder.
It does. Indeed.
Yeah. Okay, well, we better hurry then. Liz is telling us we don't have a lot of time left in the show.
Speak faster, Jeff.
All right, here we go. It's time for Getting to Know Us. Yeah, it's a time of the show where we get we talk about stuff that we've been doing between shows and what we're going to do and all that kind of stuff. So
I haven't done anything. Move on.
well, then good. I get to use all the time then to
You
talk
do.
about because I've been busy. You know, in addition to all the normal singing stuff that I do, I got this weekend was just jam packed with APG community fun. Maybe not a lot of APG community, but that's okay. Even if it's just a couple of folks, that's enough for me. And got to meet up with, and I mentioned this on earlier shows, Jim Mercado, our APG brand ambassador, guy that came up with the logo, the Fly Acme logo, etc. He was in, and I learned a lot. And this is nice because it was just Jim and I, and we were able to meet up and have a wonderful meal and several glasses of wine together. Okay, maybe just a couple. I don't know. I'm not sure because this place, this Italian restaurant, the bartender knows me, and apparently just like before I even ask, he's already refilling a very large glass of red wine that he knows. He doesn't even have to ask me what kind of wine. He knows the wine I like, and he was doing the same for Jim as well. Yeah, like cheers. Yeah. Anyway, Jim, I knew he had some affiliation and involvement in Cirrus, CIRRUS aircraft, but apparently he's doing some marketing work for some local Cirrus-related companies, and he also is a Cirrus pilot himself, a serious Cirrus pilot, and he was in this area of the country, in Knoxville, Tennessee, just to the north of Georgia. They have a big delivery center and facility for training. And I'm so happy that I got a chance to talk with Jim about this because he explained to me how serious Cirrus is about training pilots and the fact that you have to now, at least, maybe not a couple of years ago when Steph used to rent them, but now if you want to rent a Cirrus aircraft, you have to go through their training program and get basically what equates to a type rating in the Cirrus airplane. Even the propeller, the propeller versions of the airplane. Now they have a Vision Jet, which is a jet-powered Cirrus aircraft. And they are serious about safety and training. And it's so good to hear because, general aviation's safety record is not anything close to the commercial airline and business jet world of aviation here in the States and around the world. So anyway, it was such a great conversation that he went through all the things that you have to do to even rent or own a Cirrus aircraft. And so he was there in Knoxville for an event, a training event. And then he, instead of going straight back from Knoxville to Northern California via Dallas or one other, whatever connecting airport, because I don't think they have any nonstops from Knoxville. Well, they might actually have a nonstop from Knoxville to the Bay Area. I'm not sure. Anyway, he drove down from Knoxville to Atlanta, and then it was last Saturday. And as I mentioned, we went to a really good Italian restaurant, and he got to meet Sal, the bartender, and we had a very nice meal and great conversation, and didn't even talk once about anything to do with APG or branding or anything. In fact, he he texted me a couple of days later and said, "Yeah, we didn't even talk about branding ideas." And I just wrote back to him and said, "Oh well." It was, next time maybe. So anyway, great to see you, Jim. We didn't even I didn't record anything and didn't take a picture, nothing. Just great. Yeah, just two friends getting together. So that was Saturday, and then on Sunday evening, I got to meet up with Dave Lieb and Rebecca Burke at the Brass Tap, and I made a recording. And I'm not going to say anything else because if I do, I'm just going to be repeating myself as I do. And so I'm trying to avoid that. So let me see if I can find that. If you'll add that to the stage, Liz? Here, I got it. Oh, no, that's what you've already done that. Yeah, that's what I wanted you to do. I should have been looking at that window. Sorry. Here we go. Oh, wait a minute. What happened? For some reason, the audio associated with that isn't there. So let me do this then.
It's good here, isn't it? I'm not.
Oh, I know why you're not hearing anything. You're hearing me now, right? So what happens?
Yeah, we're hearing you now.
What happens is the little switch that turns my mic on and off, if I turn it off, then that still should have been feeding audio. Oh no, I know. Okay, because I went to an alternative way of. So when you first put this picture up, Liz, was it from your keynote or mine? Oh, okay. Well, anyway, it should have had some audio associated with it, but apparently it doesn't. So now we'll just start as if nothing happened, and I'll turn on sound. And but I got to do it within this. Man, it's been all kinds of technical issues today. Mainly human error, I think. What's that noise? Oh, wow, that was a long exhale.
Stop breathing, Liz.
At first, I thought it was you sighing, but it kept going for like a couple of extra seconds. I'm thinking, well, that must be something else I'm hearing. Okay, getting to know us, and let me hit it here. So tell me if you can hear this. Hello, I'm here with two. Okay. So that's why I kept hearing Liz in the background at low volume saying stuff, and I think, oh, she's talking right over all of this. It's because you guys weren't hearing any of this. Okay. So on Sunday evening, I got a chance to meet up with another APG community member, Dave Lieb. I've had several opportunities to meet up with Dave in the past, and he contacted me, said he was going to be here over the weekend, and we figured that Sunday night was the best opportunity for us to meet up. So I made a little recording. So here we go. Hello, I'm here with two just absolutely wonderful people in Atlanta at the Renaissance Concourse Hotel. You may remember that it holds a special place of importance for the APG community because this is where half of our gathering took place for the 500th episode back in 2021, I think December of 2021, the 500 episode. The other half over in Farnborough, Captain Nick and company over there Anyway, so we're here in front of the hotel. The reason why I'm here is that Dave Lieb contacted me, told me he was going to be here this weekend to attend. I guess he has family in the Georgia area, Savannah, and that kind of stuff. So he's doing a kind of a southern trip, and so they made it up here. Rebecca is here also, made it up here to attend Hops in the Hangar last night, and I didn't make it, sadly. Maybe next year, but. So anyway, he said, hey, I'd love to get together for lunch or dinner or whatever. And so it just worked out that tonight, Sunday night, was the best night for me to get together with these two. And they're, as I said, wonderful people. We've been enjoying a nice meal over at, one of my favorite places to go, I guess, because it's one of the only places open on Sunday evening here near the airport, the Brass Tap, right? And so we had some good beer and some good food, some good tacos, and but of course, as I always say, that just pales in comparison to the wonderful conversations that we had. And you know me, I love to talk, and Rebecca asked me all these questions about the show, and man, I never hesitate to just go on forever yakking about all this stuff, because it's such an important thing to me, and such a big part of my life, this whole podcasting experience and adventure, and it goes on. Yeah. You people out there who thought that I was going to stop podcasting because I retired as an airline captain, you were wrong. No. You were wrong. So anyway, I know. Shut up, Jeff. Just let these other people say something.
Shut up, Jeff.
Shut up, Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff, shut up. Shut up, Jeff.
Shut up, Jeff.
See? So who wants to start?
You can go first.
All right, I'll go first. Hello, everyone. This is David Lieb. So this is good about right here. This is good. Yeah. Good microphone distance right here. And we're not going in the red. Very important to not really go in the red. Yes. So anyway, here a lovely weekend in Atlanta after seeing some family in Savannah, and coming here for Hops in the Hangar. It was a great time last night. So, you guys got to come down and check it out. I had some of my crew from the Boston area was down here, and we had some friends who came in from as far away as San Francisco for this. So it was really a great night and a great event.
You were here to see me.
And then the ultimate reason, the ultimate reason, yes, is to get to see our favorite Delta. Yeah, you can say it. Retired Delta, as we sit here staring at this lovely Delta plane right here.
767.
And the 76 right here. And my lovely gal Rebecca is back here, and this is her first time attending Hops in the Hangar, meeting Jeff, and we're staying here at the awesome Renaissance Concourse Hotel.
I just want to say it was so nice to meet you in person. I've heard you in my kitchen and in my living room.
I don't remember being in your kitchen.
It was a wonderful conversation. But thank you for dinner, and I just really enjoyed hearing about the history of the show.
It's amazing.
It's such a great journey.
It's been such an important part of my life, and I love sharing it.
Oh no, it was a wonderful night, and thank you so much for.
Say hi to everyone in APG land.
Hi everyone in APG land.
Awesome. All right. Back to you in the car, Jeff.
Oh, okay. And then back to you in the studio, Jeff. I love talking to myself.
Shut up, Jeff.
Hey, nice one. Very nice.
I don't know who all those people were that were yelling at me to shut up. One of them was Steph. I don't know if you recognized her.
Yes, I did. Definitely.
So Rebecca is, I found this out at the very end when we were saying our goodbyes. A wonderful, beautiful voice, great singer, and she's on Spotify, and her name is Rebecca Carter Burke. We'll have a link to her Spotify stuff in the show notes. And so I listened to one of her albums as I was driving home that evening, and I was in her. Yeah, I was in what? I'm all confused. Oh, she was in my car instead of me being in her kitchen. So, and living room. So it, turnabout's fair play, I would say. All right, so that was a lot of fun. Now, March 9, week and a half. We're still planning on having a media meet up. Captain Jur is going to be in town, and I mentioned that he said to me that he wanted to have some good beer and barbecue, and so decided that I'm going to go down to the hotel in Buckhead, pick him up, and whoever else wants to go with him, and drive up to Alpharetta to Smoke Jack Barbecue. And this may change, but that's what we're planning on now. Great barbecue, great beer up in my neck of the woods up here. And then I'll tell them that they can get back to the airport, however, or the Buckhead area as best they can. Yeah, but no, I'll take them back. So if you're in the Atlanta area, and I've already been reached out to by, was it Kevin, that lives in my neck of the woods, a little bit west of where I am, and he said he's planning on attending. So if you're anyone in the Atlanta area that loves beer and barbecue and talking aviation, plan on meeting us up at the Smoke Jack, probably around. I think his flight arrives at around 1:30, so probably let's just say 5 o'clock, 5 p.m. on Saturday. We'll probably get there a little bit before that, but that's the. Oh yeah, if you're interested, thank you, Liz. If you're interested in joining us at the meetup and you want more information, or just to actually let us know that you're planning on attending, so I'll know how.
That looks so good. I think I might. Can you pick me up, Jeff, as well?
Well, maybe we can head up there when you come in soon. We haven't really talked about that, have we? But I'm going to get to see Nick coming up pretty soon. So we'll head up to this place. Well, we're going to see more of that. Should I just spill the beans and tell you the whole thing? We're going to have an APG crew retreat at Dr. Steph's place in Tega Cay in the Charlotte area. So. And Nick is flying in from the London area, or from London, the London airport, to Atlanta. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. He's going to be here for about a week in total. And of course you are, Liz. Liz is going to be flying in. And
are you going direct to Charlotte, Liz?
Yeah, Liz is going direct.
I'm going to see Jeff, and then we're going to have a road trip. Hey.
Yep. We're going to do a road trip to Charlotte, and then we're hoping that Miami Rick and Nick Camacho will also be able to join us. So and if we end up having some kind of a public APG meetup, which I'm sure we will, especially now that you know that we're going to be all together, or many of us are going to be together in the Charlotte area in April, beginning of April, we'll let you know. More information about that meetup to come. But if you're as I said, if you're interested in joining myself and Kevin and Captain Jur and whoever else, send a email to meetup@airlinepilotguy.com. Thank you very much. Also, I'd like to do a quick shout out to RH at that other podcast that has, I think, thousands and thousands of patrons via Patreon, opposing. Oh yeah, it's the best. No, I don't think they say that they're the best aviation podcast in the universe, Liz. Oh, they probably think that, but they say the best aviation podcast in the world, I believe. And it's called Opposing Bases Air Traffic Talk, and it's really good, I have to say. And
yeah, we don't mind that they're better than us.
We don't mind. I mean, if somebody's going to beat us up, and all that, beat our pants off, so to speak, it would be RH and AG, or what I like to refer to them as RHAG at Opposing Bases. Mm-hmm. But anyway, yeah, well, Liz has said, well, you'll hear it in the podcast. And RH is now a full-fledged rookie FO at Penguin Airlines. So big shout out to
job.
him. And here we go. Yay.
I think this just proves the superiority of airline pilots over air traffic controllers. Yeah. Otherwise, he would still be in the tower, wouldn't he?
He got tired of all the ridicule that he received for being an air traffic controller in FOMAS. Of course, he was a pilot before he became an air traffic controller, and we can't really give AG any ridicule at all because he is also a fully rated retired Army
helicopter pilot
and King Air pilot too. That was what he was flying last. So yeah, we can't give him. Yeah, let's quickly do some cover art coverage, Liz. Throw that baby up there.
Okay, so yeah, there's the picture. We had some good suggestions like Mooney Goonie and Maggoty Flying Fish and Shot on Approach and Smells Fishy to Me. Cocked Up Crew, that was another one. When Maggots Drop from Overhead, but I'm afraid Maggots on a Plane won this one. And I just give you an indication of what it takes to do this. Having got the original image, had to convert that into a 1950s style horror looking image, and also take the arms and legs of these maggots, because maggots don't have arms and legs. Then I had to find an old-fashioned television to act as the sort of a surround for
the frame.
The frame, that's the word I was looking for. And then make it look. Now, you see kids nowadays, they've no idea what we had to use for a television. So those that's perfectly authentic, all those lines. But for that, I had to thank a little guy that puts out a YouTube thing. And what's it called? Oh, Lord. It's disappeared. Oh, Blue Lightning TV Photoshop. Thank you, mate, for explaining how to get those lines across the screen. If you want to find the show notes, not show notes, the show number. Well, it was pretty easy, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a very easy one. Thank you.
Yeah. In the old days, we used to have 609 lines. That was the indication of the quality of your cathode ray tube. How many lines it painted, but we got 607 lines here. Yeah. Underneath that APG, and underneath that was the logo on one of the remote control sensor. Yes, the infrared
remote
sensor,
control.
but,
I mean, this is a modern TV set.
Well, it is kind of
showing.
yeah. Well,
I'm looking for the dial that goes click, 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 click. The rotary dial. Yeah, and the rabbit ears.
You actually used to tune your television into the different frequencies.
Yeah, you had to go walk up to your TV because there wasn't a remote control, and then you had to use your hands to adjust the rabbit ears to the. And if you change the channel, well, you're gonna have to do all this over again. And, yeah,
absolutely.
Got a lot more exercise back then.
Yeah, and every time an airplane flew over, the picture used to fade and come back, and because of interference on the VHF frequencies. God, I mean, those were the days.
The good old days.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll just say yes. So we don't have a lot of time left in the show, but we want to cover some more feedback. What we're going to just say, we didn't have any new contributors or new patrons to the Coffee Fund, but there you go. That's how you learn about the Coffee Fund, airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. And that's all we'll say about it. Thank you.
Yeah, I like that new graphic. That's great.
Well, that's just to, kind of have something to throw up there when we...
You need to move the mugs down a bit so that the handles become the pylons, because they're sticking above the wings.
I'm not the one that came up with that. I stole that from somebody out there in the world, so don't tell anybody.
Out there in the world.
But you're right. That's the way I would have done it if I had come up with this creation. All right. Okay, let's forge on with some feedback, and let's see, I need to do this.
Captain, incoming message.
Okay, just quickly from Robert, who is not Robert Tucker, Robert lives in Tucker. Let's see, I'm typing this en route back home to Atlanta on one of JetBlue's A220s. Taking off from Boston, I felt like we were not at full throttle after starting the takeoff roll. Full throttle kicked in. This got me wondering if it was from a takeoff button or manual control from the pilot in command. Turns out there are manual commands, but a little more complicated answer. Geared propulsion. My dispatcher friend shared a link to more info on these engines that were new to me. Please forgive me if this has been discussed before. Yeah, we've talked on and off over time about Pratt & Whitney's geared turbofan technology. And he gave us a link to a long article that we're not going to read, talking about the geared turbofan engine by Pratt & Whitney. But what I think what your friend was alluding to, Robert, you may have misunderstood him. The geared turbofan engines do take quite a long time to kind of warm up. The starting sequence is quite long compared to the kind of jet engines that we've been using for so many years. And that's because there are so many pieces in there that have to reach a thermal equilibrium, I think, to safely operate above idle. Thank you. I don't know where that came from, because usually by this time I'm slobbering over.
I wonder what you were going to say. That was a great choice.
Well, thank you. And well, now thanks for making such a big deal of it, because now people are going to go, well, apparently he's just an idiot that can't come up with words like that.
Oh,
and you'd be right.
Did it well, I thought. Yeah, very good.
No. So anyway, I think, let's see if you agree with me, Captain Nick. So when we're clear for takeoff, especially if it's a rolling takeoff, you don't want, and we've seen videos, in fact, I remember a Mad Dog video that I kept getting sent, like, it seems like once a month. I think it was a takeoff of a Mad Dog out of Norfolk, Virginia, that was kind of taking the active runway and kind of pouring the coal. What is it? Pouring it to the coals? Pouring the coals on? Whatever the saying is, putting the power up a little bit, probably too much. Before the airplane was actually aligned with the runway and pointing in the right direction. And there was a lot of tire scrub and skidding and everything else. And you have to be careful about that. But so when you're going onto the runway, as I said, especially a rolling takeoff, not a static takeoff, we put the power up, but you don't want to put it up too much. So you put it up to a certain mid-level setting. And then once you're all straightened out and you're lined up with the runway, and then you advance it to your either normal or reduced power setting for takeoff. So your performance is predicated on that power setting. And even if you do a standing takeoff or a takeoff from a stop, we always put the power up to a certain level just to make sure you're getting even or equal acceleration on both engines, because if you want to let go of the brakes before they're relatively even in thrust being produced before you do, because you could end up going off to one side or the other. So you need to in thrust we do trust for sure, and you want to trust that thrust is equal, and then once you're satisfied with that, then you move it up to that final position and that's usually at the point where you engage the auto throttle system or auto thrust system, and the computers make sure it's all nice and finely tuned to that throttle setting. So I'm suspecting that that's what you felt from, like, the power wasn't all the way up, and then finally you felt the full throttle kick in. Would you agree, Nick? Is that
absolutely. In fact, there's a series of calls you make during this phase. So the guy says take off, who has flying it. He pushes up the throttle to in Airbus around 70%, and he waits now for his out there pilot to call stabilize, because the engines take a while to accelerate, and when they both stable, and he's checked all the gauges to make sure the engines and everything is looking fit and good for a takeoff. Then he'll call stabilize, and at that point, whoever's handling the aircraft puts the engines up to full power for takeoff, and off you go. So you definitely get a two-stage acceleration.
Yep. Hey, Liz, can you throw up the keynote and get one of those images with have all the gears in it? There we go. Yeah. So we have a nice comment from iHaul Boxes in our audience. I heard pilots need to be super quick on the clutch too with these GTFs.
Oh, indeed. So, Jeff, why are they gearing that front fan?
I suspect, Nick, that it has something to do with efficiency, but I don't know about you, but look at all those gears, and
I know, it looks like my downed Audi. How many gears do you need?
I don't know, but apparently it results in a quieter, more fuel-efficient operation. However, I'm thinking, man, you have so much.
Yeah, the big problem is that the core of the engine, which is the jet engine, is actually relatively small, and it wants to rotate nice and fast because that's very efficient for it. It doesn't want to be slowed down. So once we're in the cruise, we want to throttle back, and we don't really, that central core is not working at a very efficient speed, and we can't run the engines too fast at takeoff because the tips of those big blades start going supersonic, and that makes the loud buzzsaw noise you hear from some aircraft when you get airborne. So the gearing actually reduces the speed of the big fan. It allows the main core of the engine to run at its most optimum speed, and it gears the front fan down so that it is now producing a lot of thrust, but it doesn't have to go as fast as it otherwise would on a conventional jet engine.
Yeah, so you get the dual advantages of that really super efficient, high rotation, small little jet engine turbine, and you get the efficiencies of that big fan through that gear.
The big ass fan.
Yeah, the big ass fan. There you go. Greg, we're always thinking about you.
Yeah, we
think about big ass fan. Anyway, so there you have it. There is we'll have a link to this article in the show notes. Thank you, Robert. Always good to hear from you. Also, we got this from Sean. Hello, APG crew. I started an APG F1 Fantasy League on the F1 app. If anyone on the crew or listeners would like to join in, and then he gives us a link to it, which we'll have in the show notes. You have to hurry, though. When I took this screenshot, it was a couple of hours ago, and at that point, it was only 23 hours and 4 minutes to the cutoff for this. And I don't know if you can join in after, like, once the race season is underway, but it's this Saturday is the first race at Bahrain, and I'm not sure exactly. I've never done the fantasy, F1 fantasy, or any other kind of fantasy, except for kind of fantasies I really can't share with you. But a sports fantasy thing I've never done before, so I'm not sure how this works actually. But if you're interested in that kind of thing, please go to the link that Sean gave us for the APG F1 Fantasy League. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it.
It's a bit pricey for me. It says that you can only spend $100 million. So I'm going, don't know if I can afford.
You don't have an extra 100 million? I thought, what about your retirement accounts? Come on.
Well, I might have to go to the Cayman Islands for that lot.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess you have to pick, like it says Max Verstappen. If you pick Max Verstappen for one of your drivers, that's 30 million out of the 100. That leaves you with 70. And so you can kind of see, are these the real salaries that these guys make, or is that just something that they're...
I don't know, like, quite honestly.
Lewis would make more than 19.3, I would think, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows? All right. Well, anyway, check it out. Speaking of Formula One, free practice 2 for Bahrain just happened a few hours back, and looks like the Mercedes cars did pretty well. I don't know, maybe Red Bull is sandbagging us. Could be.
Probably, knowing them.
Yeah.
Or perhaps they're distracted by their leader's problems. Ooh,
yeah, but apparently he was cleared through and still with the team. I think I saw some kind of a news blurb about that. Anyway, it's not an F1 show. There are plenty of great F1 podcasts out there. My favorite is Missed Apex, MISSED APEX, Missed Apex podcast. Check them out. You'll be glad you did, and you'll thank me.
Yeah, I like them. They're good.
Yeah, they're very funny and they're very informative. So check it out. Anyway, so we're not gonna tread on their world.
No,
no chance of it. Let's see. Let's look quickly at this one here from Bill Jones, and I need to get a. Let me just make sure I have that video ready to go. Yeah, I do. Okay, Jeff. Several years back, I landed at an Altaport. Remember we talked about Altaport last episode? The Courchevel
Yes,
Altaport.
we did. It was very fascinating.
Well, he landed at one. He took off and landed at one called Maribel, the next valley over. As you covered, it's a little bit challenging. I learned of the altiports while watching a Discovery Channel show called The Most Deadliest Airport about 3 months prior to our trip to the area. So I did what any normal person would do and Googled this flying club and booked a flight. My wife was not impressed. I have attached a YouTube video of the flight in Maribel. The aircraft was a tail dragger, and we landed on skis with no brakes, with only the vertical hillside to bring us to a halt. Your glide slope is 6 degrees rather than the normal 3-degree glide slope we see here in the States. The CFI, the certified flight instructor, and the CFI, and he asked, I'm not sure. I think something happened with his sentence there. But anyway, the CFI asked if I would be coming back the next day to finish my mountain certification. This is clearly a misunderstanding, as I just wanted to go for a joyride. This still stands as one of my favorite aviation adventures. Enjoy. Blue skies and tailwinds. And this is Bill Jones in our community, and we'll play just a little bit of this video, but I think everybody's going to enjoy it. So here we go. And let me make sure the sound's up a little bit here. I put it all the way down to 0, so let me see. Okay. Let me know if it's too loud, okay? So he's already in the airplane with the CFI. Okay, they're pointed down slope. Skidding down the runway on the skis. And then, looks like they just cleared some kind of a bus going down on the road there.
That or a train. By the way, is a mounting certification the same as a mount-in certification?
I think it's very similar.
Okay.
Did I say mounting?
No, she's curious.
Mountain. So they're up there and I heard, I'm not going to show the whole thing, but you can hear some of their conversation going on. From what I gleaned from the conversation is that the CFI is actually an Airbus pilot for one of the airlines in that area. Probably Air France. I don't know. I don't think he said the name of the airline. But he's... and the interesting thing is I thought it was the CFI flying and Bill was just a passenger, but I think Bill's actually flying.
Is it a Pilatus of some kind? What do you reckon?
He said it was a tail dragger on skis. So I don't think it's as big as a Pilatus. I'm not sure what type the airplane is. I can't tell.
Quite a long nose by the looks of it.
Yeah. IL Boxes thinks it's a Moraine Saunier. I don't know. It sounds like some kind of a wine, actually. I don't know. It could be.
Yeah. Red wine by the look of it.
Yeah. Let me see if I can get the... There we go, the controls. So I'm going to go ahead and, because we're running out of time here, and I'm going to have a link to this in the show notes. It's on YouTube. It's on his YouTube channel. So we want to see the culmination. Yeah, we want to see the crash. Luckily, the camera he was using survived the crash, and that's why we're seeing it today.
Yeah,
I think
exactly right.
Yeah, okay. Obviously, he's still alive because he's the one that sent us the feedback. I'm trying to advance it. Okay, here we go. We're coming into the... So you're going, where's the airport? There is no airport. This is an altiport, baby. And it's just like a ski slope.
It does. It looks exactly like a ski slope.
And so we're coming in. How do I get rid of that thing in the movie? I don't know. There we go. It's disappeared. Okay, look at that. I mean, that really does look like a typical ski slope area, but they've cleared the skiers away. You'll see as we get a little bit closer, Nick, that road that bus was on when they were taking off is just on the perimeter of the altiport. Here it is right there.
There's an awful lot of junk around, isn't there?
Yeah. And then here we go.
Oh, very smooth. A little red light came on. What does that mean?
I don't know. Probably stall. I don't know. Well, Bill didn't think that it was a very good landing, but I think it was pretty good, actually. I mean, there's no wheels.
It was great.
It was
Absolutely.
just skis that he's landing on. And then they bring it back on up, and I think it was at this point when I realized, wait a minute, he's using both of his hands, and how is he flying I think it's Bill is actually flying the airplane.
Well, good job, Bill. Excellent.
Yeah. Very cool, huh? So, you know what? Our community is amazing that we talk about an Altaport, and then somebody goes, oh, I got some video of me actually flying an airplane at one of these Altaports next valley over. Okay.
Good job.
I'm getting
Brilliant.
the picture, Liz. Okay, I'll turn it off. There's Bill right there. He was setting up his camera, had it in his lap, and so that's one of the shots at the beginning of the video that I kind of went over to make it so it wasn't too
You sure that's not John Belushi?
Could be.
Okay.
Maybe he's related.
Well, it just reminded me of that movie. What is it?
Yeah.
Animal House.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know Bill Jones personally, but maybe
You're
that's
a nice
the kind
guy, Bill. Thank you very much for sending
You may
that
have that
in.
kind of personality. You know?
Don't listen to me.
Well, Liz, is it okay if we do that Delta pilot retiring, or do you want to save these for the next show? Why don't I don't hear Liz? Do you hear Liz?
No, I think she's gone to bed.
Oh, okay. Well, we didn't hear anything from you. We haven't heard anything from you in the last 5 minutes. Okay. Well, I apologize, folks, if you're listening and we're going over 3 hours. Yeah, she's approximating. We had some technical difficulties earlier on, so we're really not sure exactly how long we've been running. And you know what? Last show, I think, was only 2.5 hours long, so we have an extra half an hour to play with.
Yes, exactly right. Way.
Yay! So, but on the other hand, Liz, I know how you love to keep feedback in your. Okay. So we got this from Jonathan in Minneapolis. He says, saw this tweet, or it's an X post. I digress. Yeah, it's an X post about a Delta Airlines pilot retirement plan and celebration, and feel like the retirement plan, I think he means Delta Airlines retirement flight and celebration, and feel like the gauntlet has been thrown down for the retirement celebration you've referenced for some time this year. Delta Captain Rosencrantz chartered an A330-900 and flew a whole bunch of family and friends to Hawaii. Wow, that's impressive, actually. Where do we sign up for the Captain Jeff retirement charter? And how far do you think a 717 can fly? Well, I'll tell you what, Jonathan. Probably. If we took off from LA, like this captain did, I think we'd be, I don't know, somewhere not too far off the coast of California in the Pacific Ocean at the end of it. So, yeah, it's probably not the best idea.
So I like the way not only did he charter this airplane, he had Team USA written on the side at the same time.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I would have been more impressed if he had his name on it, Captain Rosencrantz.
That perhaps you couldn't afford that.
So we do have a little bit of video here at LAX. So we can pop that up. Thank you, Liz. And here we go.
So if you guys are just joining us, this is a captain retiring. Decided to charter his own A330neo, heading to Kona with his family and friends for the next 24 hours. He'll be heading back to LAX tomorrow.
And a quick shout out for the airline video guys from Keith Rosencrantz, final flight, 8871 Delta.
There we go. Shout out.
Great video.
Give us a shout out.
Yeah, the Billy's in the way.
Tail.
Me for now.
Oh, I'm sure that caught Tater's attention.
United 447. That's SoCal departure. Get it, y'all. Depart.
That guy talking almost sounds like Greg Willits.
55, turn left, Alpha Alpha.
Not this guy.
From a 24 left, contact ground point 6. Left, Alpha Alpha, ground 2. Ground point 65, Delta 355.
Well, it's a nice airplane.
Yeah. A330-900 Neo.
Captain, have a great flight, family and friends.
Sounds a little bit like Greg.
Let's see if we can zoom into the cockpit there.
Now, this is where you want to press ham against the window.
Yeah, either that or flip the bird.
I don't know if you knew we were up high atop the H Hotel or not.
TV7, Smo says they'd like to talk to you some more.
All right, so now they're showing
71 heavy, 240 at 7. RNF Ray, runway 24 left, clear. Delray, clear for takeoff. 4 left.
They need to get better radios. They keep cutting out.
I know, it's dreadful, isn't it? Those damn Airbuses.
I think it's the airline videos guys radio. And there you go. They're
Look at that thing leap off the ground.
Have a great time.
He can't have invited that many people. It's
yeah, I wouldn't imagine
accelerated very well.
I mean, how many friends could an airline pilot have? Probably not that many.
Yeah, very true, Jeff. Very true.
24 right. 24 right, clear.
Yeah, here he goes. He's rolling down the runway and should be rotating any moment. Here we go. Rotate.
Oh, nice one. Good call.
And man, I would have stood it up on its tail.
Oh, he's not doing a bad job.
No, it's pretty good for an Airbus. What I mean by that is...
heavy contact, SoCal departure, aloha, y'all. 8871.
Aloha, very good.
Y'all.
Yes.
Going to Kona with some family and friends for 24 hours.
Very cool.
Yeah, he's doing the acceleration maneuver there. Isn't that cool?
That's very good.
Yeah. iHall Boxes says, charter an A330neo? That's how much Delta pilots make? Oh, yeah, that's nothing.
That's
nothing,
just a small change. Yeah.
I actually thought the same thing. And I went, wait a minute. I was one of those Delta pilots. He must know somebody. He must have gotten some kind of a really
All
good
you need
discount.
to do is shake out the back of your sofa to get enough money to do that.
Yeah, I'm impressed. I've not heard of that before. So I'm sorry, Jonathan, to disappoint you, but I can't even do a chartered 717 flight if I wanted to now, because I don't think that Delta would be very happy with me if I just showed up and, borrowed one for a little bit.
Well,
yeah, we could get
get
Brett
the one
to do
from
it.
Get the one from the museum. That probably still
I don't
works.
think you'd want. I don't think so. I would not. No, I would not do that. And you know what? What the heck? I know we're over, or probably over. But let's go ahead and finish this off, because good old Paul, our friend, who sends us audio feedback every now and then, wanted to kind of straighten out something. We had some was it last? Yeah, it was the last episode where he talked about the weird thing that they do for confidence training and stuff and safety and nuclear power plants. And Paul, by the way, is a retired nuclear power plant. What would you call him? There's a word that I'm looking for, that engineer maybe. Yeah. Or, expert or something. I don't know. Anyway, so we're going to, if you can put my, thing up again. Thank you, ma'am. And let's hear from Paul. Oh, hit one more.
Of course! Nuclear power!
It's the job of tomorrow. Today!
Hello, APG crew. My name is Paul. I live between Cleveland and Pittsburgh. Today is National Polar Bear Day. When I think of polar bears, I think of penguins, snow, and ice. They say you're supposed to walk like a penguin as you walk across ice, and that's what they told us to do at work. In order to simulate walking on ice, we had the slip simulator, of which I spoke about in the previous feedback concerning nuclear safety culture. This would actually allow one to practice walking on a very slippery surface such as ice or even possibly a wet floor, and gain confidence that you could comfortably walk upright on the ice and make it to a less slippery part of the surface without falling and getting hurt. In the background, you're currently hearing an Aer Lingus A321LR just before takeoff. The LR version is the same as the A321neo, but only differing in the number of fuel tanks installed. This was recorded directly across from the sharklets of the wing from inside. Aer Lingus now has direct flights between Cleveland and Dublin. Another nice thing is that at Dublin, just like in Toronto Pearson, American passengers pre-clear U.S. customs before they take off. I was in Dublin for a weekend holiday. During my stay, I was able to run around Dublin, check out the Temple Bar area, drink good beer, eat great food, and tour the Guinness Brewery storehouse. I was watching the $42 million man. In the 70s, he was known as the $6 million man. He walked on the moon and was also a test pilot for NASA. Being the MacGyver of the 70s, he used his bionic arm and legs, which were nuclear powered, to get him out of precarious situations. One day, Steve Austin was a passenger on a general aviation flight. The flight took off and crashed in the desert. In the process, before the crash, Steve was blinded by a ruptured oil line that sprayed him in the face. With Steve Austin's MacGyveristic-like talents, they were able to repair the aircraft and get back into the air. The pilot of the aircraft then suffers a heart attack. Steve and the passengers moved the pilot from the left seat to the back, and Steve then moved into the left seat, while another passenger joined him in the front to be his eyes outside the airplane. In order to read the gauges, Steve punches out all the glass covers and then feels the needles for the readings. Eventually, they all land safely. In another episode, Steve was flying on a military passenger flight. After the flight attendant gave the pre-flight safety briefing, the passengers all said thank you. Was this a common practice on military passenger flights back in the 70s, or is this just done for TV? Don't forget, as Jeff says, we don't need the APG crew to have an APG meetup. I'll be in Seattle April 21st through the 23rd. The APG crew has my contact information. Get a hold of me and we'll pick a place to meet. My 3 minutes are up. My flight's taking off. See ya!
Woohoo!
Well, that was a long old warm-up, wasn't it? 3-minute warm-up.
Yeah. Well, maybe he had some of those geared turbofans or something.
You never know.
But thanks, Paul. He always does such a nice job with his audio feedback. And by the way, I hope you don't mind, Paul, I added the little Simpsons intro at the beginning of your feedback for us because, hey, you worked in a nuclear power plant. So I thought that would be fun. Just like
yes,
Homer. Yeah. Okay. I get it, Liz. I get the hint. I see the little airlinepilotguy.com thing there. It's time to wrap up. Airlinepilotguy.com is our website. That's where you go to learn all kinds of stuff about the crew and the community. We have a calendar there. We have a library. We have a library and ways to buy merch and learn more about Captain Nick's amazing plane tales. And I'm sure I'm missing something. Oh, you can go there to see us on YouTube if you don't go to youtube.com/airlinepilotguy. Lots of different things are on our website, so check that out. And we're also on social media, or what I like to call Socialmedias.
Oh, yeah, we're on Facebook, Airline Pilot Guy, or one word, and we're on X, APG Crew, with an @ in front of it, and Twitter, not Twitter, I've already done that, Instagram. Oh,
there's no such thing as Twitter anyway. What are you talking about?
Jeff will fix that in post.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, for sure.
Instagram, APG Crew, all one word. And finally, youtube.com/Airline Pilot Guy, where you'll find this very video that I am now featured on.
Ooh, that's cool. Sure. Yeah. If you, thank you. Sure. There, she's asking me about if I wanted to mention the rv@airlinepilotguy.com email address. I do, because so many of you have already done that. And I'm looking so forward to meeting up and mooch docking off of you fine folks in the future when I'm in my motorhome and I'm in APG Mobile Studio 1. And so I'm looking forward to that. So if you have a place for me to park overnight, you don't even have to even say hello to me if you don't want to, or let me in the house. Yeah, you might, especially if you have young children. You probably want to keep me away. And I'm just kidding. I'm harmless. rv@airlinepilotguy.com. So thanks, Liz, for reminding me of that. And we have this guy that I don't know why, but he always seems to be wherever I am, and weirdly enough, taking a shower. Hello, could you tell us about Slack?
Okay, but I'm dripping wet.
All right. Well, that's okay. Come on over here and tell us all about it.
APG listeners, please join us on our Slack team. Slack is a communication, coordination, and sharing platform that works on your mobile, laptop, or browser. On Slack, we share news and ideas. We suggest episode and plain tales topics. We plan events and meetups. To get into the Slack team, please email me at slack@airlinepilotguy.com. That's SLACK, Sierra Lima Alpha Charlie Kilo @airlinepilotguy.com, or send me a tweet with your preferred email address to @Hillel, and I'll send you an invitation. That's Hillel, spelled Hotel India 11 Echo 1, and see you in Slack.
Thanks a lot, Hillel.
Jeff, this is my private time.
Well, then stop.
I
Stop
didn't mean
shouting then.
Wait, hang on.
Private.
Thanks a lot, Hillel.
What the heck is on this hand towel, Jeff?
I'd rather not say. I'm sorry. Little misfiring going on here on my part. And on all right. With that, we want to bring in our producer, Miss Liz.
Hi, Liz. Well done.
Oh, there she is. Thanks so much for all the work you do. You are amazing.
My
I'm
pleasure.
not just saying it. I mean it. I love her to death, and she is, without her, we probably wouldn't have a show anymore. So
Simon
thank
and
you, Liz.
me, that's you need both of us. Simon and I.
I know. Simon and Liz, a marriage made in heaven.
Exactly.
And, okay. And that's about it. Anything else to say before we sign off? No? All right. Well, then, wishing you all clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care, and God bless.
Sayonara.
See you next time.
Boop, boop, ba-doop.
Boop, boop. Turn off your recorder, Jeff.
Okay.
So we forgot to mention for people in the chat room, Steph is off on an adventure. Hopefully she's going to be back. We're hoping next week. We're going to have to set aside a whole block of time for her getting to know us with all the stuff she's been doing.
With the whole show, we won't
Yeah.
bother pitching up. It'll just
I'm
be
hoping
Steph
so.
telling stories.
Liz is counting on it.
So titles for the show.
Oh, yeah.
What do you got there? I've got Bring Your Own Tow Bar, BYOT.
Yeah, got that.
Drinking at the Tow Bar. Get it? Drinking at the Tow Bar.
Oh, yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Drinking at the Tow Bar. Okay.
The Tow Bar.
Okay.
APG is the lowest common denominator.
Nah, I don't think I could do that.
A seriously good meetup. Seriously, CIRR.
Okay, yeah.
A seriously good meetup.
Uh-huh.
That's about it. Let's look at the chat room.
Do we have to?
Well, what's the seriously?
Cirrus, like Cirrus aircraft. And we had a
Cirrus-
meetup. Jim was talking about Cirrus
Jeff
aircraft.
had a
so
seriously good meetup with Jim Mercado.
that's why she had to
good,
spell out Cirrus.
Yes, okay.
With a C.
Tug Tow Bar Troops
Yes,
was the other
that's a
one I
good one.
got. I quite like drinking at the tow bar. That's a good one.
Is it though?
Does anyone care? No.
Does anyone?
Well, you know what?
care?
I kind of like it because it doesn't have poop and it doesn't have maggots and it does like
that's
it's
very
we can
true.
fit that in somehow.
no poop pyramids.
Huh. It's defective with no poop pyramid.
You think you got something to go on there, Nick?
Well, I've got plenty. I'm just waiting to see if some brilliant member of the chat room comes
That's a
up with
dumb
something
name,
better.
Tanya. Great show.
That's every show, isn't it?
Yeah.
Great show number 608.
Oh, all I retained from the show is for APG 700, Jeff can rent an
Tim, I think we
A330
need to
Neo.
limit the title to like 4 words.
That's a long title. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dinking at the tow bar with tow heads. What's dinking?
I think he means drinking. I think.
When you hit someone over the head with a bottle.
I'm just giving him a bad time.
Yeah. Great show. Yes.
Good point, Liz.
All right. It looks like they've run out of ideas.
Yeah.
But I've already got the one I want to do. And I
Okay.
like drinking at the tow bar.
He's
but,
just teasing y'all.
BYOT also might make an appearance.
I like BYOT because I came up with that one. I like that.
Exactly.
What was it I was going to say? Aloha, y'all. That's what I should have ended the show like that.
Aloha.
Darn it.
Well, you can put that in post. Aloha.
Aloha, y'all.
But shouldn't it be aloha all y'all?
It should be, but he didn't say that. That guy said just aloha, y'all.
I know.
But I can do it. You're right, Liz. Here, hang on. Let me record this. Aloha,
Why don't you clip
all y'all.
his audio and put that in?
No. Did Jeff say it again?
Well, luckily I record in separate tracks, Liz.
Oh, okay. All right.
So even though Nick rudely interrupted my recording,
He did indeed.
I got it.
Anyway, thanks for joining us, everybody. At some point, we're going to have to probably go back to a little later start once we have Steffi back on, because we've been taking advantage in a way of her being away. We started a bit early so that we could, but once she's back, we'll be sliding it back. Anyway, thanks, everybody. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Thanks
Bye.
for hanging with us.